Podmortem would like to thank Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Original Cinematic is an independent production company that has made it their mission to create, produce, and promote films that are inclusive, honor women, promote the LGBTQIA+ community, and provide prominent positions and roles to POC actors and filmmakers, and promote the films of marginalized and underrepresented populations. These are all things that are extremely important to our podcast as well.
Original Cinematic is currently accepting scripts and treatments. Both William and Xxena Rush are also available via email or Zoom to discuss writing and provide input and resources to all aspiring writers, free of charge. Their information will be made available in the show notes. There may be delays due to a hectic schedule and all projects being read on a first-come, first-served basis, but everything will be read and responded to. William Rush has individually produced numerous projects, including Pack is Here, Before, The Cottage, The Winemaker, and Day by Day. Their multi-award-winning film Group premiered and was celebrated at multiple film festivals as well as screenings, both in person and via Zoom, that were graciously made available to us and our patrons.
Original Cinematic has many exciting projects on the horizon. Their next film, Immersion, has been completed. The award-winning Sweetener is in development. Fetish begins shooting in September, and Encore will begin next spring. Their documentary, Women in Conversation, is slated for a September release, and we're looking forward to each and every one of them. It is truly an honor to partner with Original Cinematic, and we can't thank them enough for their contribution to our show. And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Salutations! Welcome to Podmortem. I'm Travis Hunter, joined as always by my co-hosts, my sister, and my brother-in-law.
Hi, I'm Reneé Hunter Vasquez.
Hi, I'm John Paul Vasquez.
This week, we're broadcasting live from an apartment in Rome, discussing the 1982 giallo film, Tenebrae. This film was written and directed by Dario Argento. After over half a decade away from the subgenre that he helped define, Argento called upon personal, societal, literary, and cinematic influences to craft an indelible and iconic giallo in Tenebrae. With an intriguing and inventive story, sadistic splashes of violence, captivating camera work, and an ominous and infectious score, this film would defy its initial censorship and moderate success to become well regarded as one of the horror master's greatest works. This film was suggested to us by friends of the show, Noreen S., Liz Heath, Ben Coons, Miguel Myers ATX, Pancake the Panda, Beth Bauer, Lisa, Jasmine, and Solomon. We'd like to thank each and every one of them for their continued support of the show, as well as this suggestion. This film was also the winner of our July Patreon poll, so thank you to all of our patrons who participated and voted. If you'd like to help us pick an episode, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/thepodmortem. So, Tenebrae. What were your first impressions on the film?
I had never heard about the movie or knew about it. I know I heard you talk about it a few times, T, and then people requesting it. But for me, out of all the Italian horror that we've covered, with an exception of Demons, because I really, really fucking liked that movie, this was very, very B-horror, cheesy movie, and I fucking enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the. I don't know if a lot of it was supposed to be funny, but a lot of it is very, very funny. The slasher elements of it, I know you had mentioned it before we talked off mic when we were talking about covering it and everything, and then when it did win, and then we had spoke about it. I was very surprised in that, and I did enjoy it. I was like, okay. The ending, I was like, okay, hell yeah. I was like, this is great. But yeah, out of the Italian horrors we've covered, this is very fun. This. I didn't know if I'm like, am I just supposed to sit here and turn my brain off and watch this as like a B horror, or am I supposed to pay attention to shit? Because either way, I'm enjoying the fuck out of this. Like it did pull me into what was going on, and then when you do start to realize things, you're like, oh shit. But this was a lot of fun.
No, I totally agree. I think that I wasn't really expecting, because I didn't know anything about it. I know that it won the poll. I know that there have been several requests for it. I didn't expect it to be quite so, maybe accessible is the word. Because you hear giallo, and I know we have covered many giallo films. I've pointed out a lot of them, despite having like a fundamental misunderstanding or something, or whatever.
Or whatever T keeps telling me.
Whatever T keeps fucking texting me.
The light.
Red light, whatever. But I just expected it to be a little more, I don't even know the word. I didn't think that it would be so grounded. And T was kind of helping us to understand off mic that it's not supernatural, does not equal giallo. Red light equals giallo.
No.
But,
No.
but I think that I just maybe expected, I don't know, like more whimsy or more surrealism maybe is what I was expecting. But this was very like, no, this is a thing happening to these people. It was very funny. Like you were saying, I don't know if these moments were intentional or not, but I do know that I got joy out of them. I think that the music, the score,
funky as fuck.
Yes, it's out of this fucking world. And I really enjoyed the story. I love a good whodunit. There was an aspect that I suspected and another aspect that completely blindsided me. I was not expecting it at all. That's always a treat. Everybody knows I love a good twist. This was just a really good time, and like the content of it was surprising to me because I didn't fully know, despite being an expert at giallo. I didn't really know what to expect. So, yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I had a really good time.
I'm glad about most of that. No, I watched this for the first time maybe a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it. But after watching it to cover it for the show, I would have to say it's definitely in my top 5 giallo films.
Okay.
I just think that it is so remarkable. Argento often gets accused, especially in more of the supernatural horror, of being more about spectacle than the story. And I feel like Tenebrae is such a perfect balance of both. Because there are these moments that are like just visually impressive and dazzling, but then there is this really good and intriguing story.
Yeah.
That has twists and turns.
Yeah.
Some you might predict, some you probably don't expect.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
It's like you always talk about, Nay, where you're saying like twist upon twist, it's like a bomb that doesn't stop exploding.
Yes.
And that's how this feels, because when you get to the end, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe this.
I would say the last probably 5-10 minutes is like, God damn,
Yeah.
give me a minute. Wait.
But I just think that because, and we had talked off one thing I will say is I went into great detail on what a giallo film is on episode 119, Blood and Black Lace. So if you would like to hear a deeper explanation of the subgenre, you can definitely listen to it there. But Argento, I feel like this is just such a triumphant return to this subgenre for him, because it's just, it's everything that you want in a giallo film, I feel. The only thing that is different as far as what I come to expect and what I appreciate a lot is this colorful lighting, I will say. And I'm not saying that that's the only thing that makes a giallo film, nay, but...
I mean, I point it out. I do point it out when we get there.
But there are moments.
Yeah.
There are moments. But I think, and especially when it comes to the fact that he worked with so much of the same crew as a lot of his more surreal and bolder visual Italian horror films, this feels so different from other work that we've talked about on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Because Suspiria, not a giallo, but feels very dreamlike. Like you said, this is so grounded.
Yeah.
There are elements of dream sequences and flashbacks that are a little more whimsical in tone, not in content.
Yeah.
But never does it feel like anything is happening that couldn't happen.
Right.
But like I said, with him working with the same crew for the most part, you get everything that you want and expect from an Argento film. You get incredible cinematography, brilliant production design that aids in the story being told, as well as some of the visuals that we see. And as you said, the score.
Yeah.
It is so good. I feel like, and I watched this interview with Daria Nicolodi, and she had said that there are parts of Argento's Deep Red where the music takes such a forefront position that it almost feels like you're watching a music video.
Okay.
I feel like there are aspects and portions of Tenebrae that feel the same way.
Yes.
Yeah, I will agree, and I don't want to say the music's almost too funky for what's going on, but there is times when it's like, damn, you don't need to be going that hard right now.
And it does.
Yeah.
I will say it's quite danceable as well.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of a repeat from Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yes.
But I think that it is just a brilliant, brilliant film. And it has so many things. It has the drama. It has the violence. It has the sexuality. It's intense. It has the mystery. It has the artistry. I think it has a lot of commentary built in, maybe regarding gender and sexuality, misogyny, maybe some societal critiques of certain institutions.
Mm-hmm.
But as JP said, it's also just so much fun on its own.
Yeah.
To where you don't even have to dig into that. That's just that's just a little treat.
Yeah.
But no, I was very glad to see this voted in on Patreon so we can get to talk about it and dive into it. And it wasn't even until we sat down I realized how few giallo films we've covered, and that's a travesty. No, don't.
I don't think it's that.
Our lists.
We just did Dream Warriors.
Our lists are very different. Our lists are very different.
Mothman had a red light in it, too.
It did.
All right.
Stir of Echoes. Fucking,
yeah.
The list goes on and on and on.
I'm quitting Podmore. No, but I was thinking because we did Blood and Black Lace.
Right.
And then the telephone segment of Black Sabbath, and I think that might be it.
Sure.
So
back to that fundamental misunderstanding.
But I did want to talk about the production of Tenebrae because the story of how it all came together and how Argento was inspired to write and create it is pretty incredible.
Okay.
So I got all of this information regarding the production from a featurette called The Unsane World of Tenebrae, a commentary track with Dario Argento, a commentary track with Alan Jones and Kim Newman, also the book Broken Mirrors, Broken Minds by Maitland McDonough, which thank you, TJ Bronson, for sending that to us. And I also got some information from an interview with Dario Argento and Daria Nicolodi in an issue of Fangoria from 1982.
Okay.
Damn.
So, in 1980, Argento was in the middle of working on his Three Mothers trilogy, which we have talked about many times on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Suspiria in 1977 and Inferno in 1980. All supernatural horror films with some giallo elements that are more focused on witchcraft and telling the story of Mother Suspiriorum, Mother Tenebrarum, and Mother Lacrimarum. So Inferno, unfortunately, was not as commercially successful as they hoped it would be.
Okay.
Partially because of the promotion and distribution of it, and it didn't really line up with what Argento wanted, and there was a lot of studio mandated, blah, blah, blah. We all know how it goes.
Of course, yeah.
But after this, his relationship grew kind of difficult with the producers of Inferno, and so he shelved the third entry of the Three Mothers trilogy, and he wouldn't complete it actually until 2007.
God damn.
But despite its title, Tenebrae, and you heard me just say Mother Tenebrarum.
Yeah.
Mother Tenebrarum is actually the mother that's in Inferno.
Okay.
And so Tenebrae, meaning darkness, you would think, it's going to be another supernatural horror film.
Yeah.
It's going to maybe even be connected to this Three Mothers trilogy, but it's entirely unrelated.
Yeah, but there's no witches in this.
No.
Well, when you said the name, I was like, oh. And then
Yeah.
I was like, no, it's Mother Tannenbaum or whatever.
Also, we have different notes. But it's actually Argento's surprising return to the giallo film.
Okay.
So it is a subgenre that defined his career in the 1970s and a subgenre that he also helped to redefine in the 1970s. He hadn't made a giallo since Deep Red in 1975. I saw in that interview on that featurette, this is his reason for returning to giallo.
Okay.
2 reasons. One, he felt very annoyed at what he thought were other directors ripping him off and even using similar titles to his gialli films of the 1970s.
Ugh.
This annoyance is actually what initially led him to go work in more supernatural horror in Suspiria and Inferno. But then he realized, why am I running away from this subgenre that I helped to popularize? And that's the second reason. It led him back because, in his words, he wanted to show everyone how it's really done.
Okay.
All right.
I will say one thing I do. We part company, me and Dario Argento.
So I can only ride with you for so long.
Because he said that it's the genre that he created, and he did not create giallo. Mario Bava created giallo.
That's a wild thing to say.
It is very wild, especially when it's derivative of pulp novels from like the fucking like 30s.
Yeah.
So come on, man.
That's wild.
But Argento decided that this was now the time for him to return to this subgenre. What gave him the idea for Tenebrae is actually a couple of stories that happened in his personal life.
Okay.
I hope.
I'm interested.
Yeah.
Hold on. So it was after Inferno in 1980. He is working on a project for MGM, which would eventually go unproduced. It would never get made. But he was staying in a hotel in Los Angeles, and while he was there, he kept getting phone calls from a fan of his films. And these phone calls started off very kind and very complimentary, but then it would continue from 1 call a day to 3 or 4 calls a day to 15 calls a day. And suddenly these phone calls, they're switching from being kind and complimentary to a little bit menacing.
Okay.
And then the caller eventually tells him, Suspiria ruined my life, and now I'm going to ruin yours. And Argento's like, what? Like, what the fuck? And so...
What is that?
Yeah, I know. What?
Said, I loved you, Dario. We could have been together.
Yeah.
Think
about it.
That's
Yeah, it's a little too much.
What the fuck?
His name was...
Yeah.
It was you.
Damn.
It's like, I'm Dario Naharis.
I don't even know who that is.
What the fuck you're saying?
I think this is for you.
Not Dario Naharis.
But he told Argento, he says, you deserve to be punished. And so Argento is like, what the fuck? And in the interview in Fangoria, it went even further because Dario Nicolodi said that they ordered a taxi and they left the hotel and got into the taxi. And on the seat of the taxi in the back seat was an envelope.
Oh, fuck
Shit.
off.
And they opened it and it was a letter to Dario Argento.
Wow.
And he's like, I don't even know. They don't know how any of this is happening.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say, by the way, because there's more to the story, but there was one critic that I guess had interviewed Dario Argento about this, and he's like, this sounds suspiciously familiar to the plot line of Mario Bava's The Telephone segment. And I'm like, this can't happen.
Stalkers are real.
Yeah,
That's probably where they got the idea for that.
Are you lying?
Yeah.
Dude, for real?
Stalkers have existed since
Long
history.
time before that. Yeah.
Yeah. But after this letter, it was when Argento told his father and producing partner about what was going on. And so they suggested, and this is going to sound very familiar to the film that we're about to discuss, they suggested that he move to a different hotel in Santa Monica. And so he had 3 weeks of peace. He said it was just a wonderful time of relaxation and refreshing relaxation. But the moment he goes to return to work on this screenwriting project, he gets a phone call at this new hotel, and the voice on the other end says, so, you think you've escaped?
No.
Argento fled from California to Italy.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
fuck.
Good.
Yeah, that was it. That was done.
Are
And
you fucking... That's got to be someone in his camp, right?
to know the taxi is
Maybe.
strange, all of it is strange.
It's
Yeah.
too much.
But there was another story that was told, and I don't know when exactly this happened. It was when he was staying at another hotel in California, possibly this one in Santa Monica, the second one. But a tourist was murdered in the lobby of the hotel he was staying in.
Was it the Cecil?
I don't know, dude.
Jesus Christ.
It's like, what is going on? But on the same night, he heard news of a drive-by at a theater. And so he's just like, what, this society, this world, and the quote that I have from him, he said, "To kill for nothing is the true horror of today."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, that's the atmosphere I want to cultivate in Tenebrae.
He ain't lying about that.
Yeah.
But this film also acts as an answer to criticisms of him as a person, as an artist, and as a filmmaker. And he said that he saw Tenebrae as a game to kind of give these critics exactly what they thought he is.
Okay.
And again,
is that embodied in a character?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's things that we can't talk about yet.
Right.
But
I
you
can-
totally.
Yeah.
But he also said that it's a critique of the Catholic Church's influence on Italian society. And if you think about it, Tenebrae is also a name of a very ancient Catholic ritual.
Oh.
Okay.
But the difficulty with Tenebrae after it was made, it, of course, and it kind of goes in line with what he was saying about his worries of this influence and conservative ideology, it was censored to hell by the Italian board.
Of course.
Really?
And he had been really, really adamant of wanting to get this rating of a VM14.
Mm-hmm.
And the Italian censors rated it VM18, which obviously limits your commercial potential.
Yeah.
But the thing that bothered him the most is that, from his understanding, it wasn't the level of violence that was responsible for this rating. It was the depiction of queer characters
Oh my God.
and sexuality. And so it infuriated the fuck out of him.
Well, yeah.
And infuriated the fuck out of me too.
Yeah. But from what I read, it wasn't even released in the US until 1984. And it was heavily cut. Even some of the narrative was completely taken out. A lot of the segments that were probably the most iconic that you remember the most were gone. It was retitled Unsane because they didn't think that American audiences would be able to pronounce Tenebrae or know what it meant or even want to go see it. And so that was one ridiculous aspect. It was also banned in the UK as a video nasty.
What?
Yes, and that ban wasn't lifted until I think it was like 15, 16 years later.
Jesus.
God.
But through all this, all the censorship, all the difficulties, all the frightening, horrific, real-life things that he experienced, Tenebrae would eventually go on to be considered not only one of the greatest giallo films ever made, but one of Argento's finest films. And I think that a big part of that is because there is just so much here.
Yeah.
There's so much to say. There's so much personal aspects of it. But then at the same time, if you don't even think about any of that, it's just a great fucking time.
Yeah.
It really is.
Let's talk about Tenebrae. Now, before we write the book on this film, we would like to issue a warning for spoilers. Pod Mortem is a very in-depth podcast, and in thoroughly discussing horror films, we have no choice but to spoil a thing or two. If you don't wish to be spoiled, please go watch the film, then come back and enjoy the show. If you've already seen the film or don't care about spoilers, let's get inspired. So the film begins next to a crackling fireplace. The flickering flames illuminate the room as a pair of hands wearing black gloves peel open the pages of a novel. Peter Neal's Tenebrae. The lettering of Tenebrae slashed bloody on the book cover. A voice narrates as the camera pans across the pages, the text of which switches from Italian to English when the camera comes closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it reads, "The impulse had become irresistible. There was only one answer to the fury that tortured him, and so he committed his first act of murder." Just a side note, on the Italian version of the film, the voice of the narrator is provided by Dario Argento.
Love that.
Okay.
But in this film throughout, anytime you see a pair of black gloves doing anything, it's Dario Argento. Which plays into what we said in the intro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the mystery figure continues to read, dragging their finger underneath the lines of black text in the book. He had broken the most deep-rooted taboo and found not guilt, not anxiety or fear, but freedom. The opening credits begin in white as the narration continues. Every humiliation which stood in his way could be swept aside by this simple act of annihilation. Murder. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very. I, again, did not know. I'd never seen this before. I didn't know what to expect. But when you start a film reading a thriller next to a roaring fireplace,
Yeah.
I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already in. And then once the beat drops.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about atmosphere?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the fire continues to burn, slender wooden logs turned white from the heat of the hearth as we get the title, Tenebrae. The mystery figure then tosses the novel of the same name into the flames, the pages catching instantly and withering away to the accompaniment of the pulsing beat and synthesizers of the opening theme. We've said a lot about this theme already.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It is such great work. The music is clearly, obviously done by members of Goblin. They are not credited as Goblin. They are credited instead as Claudio Simonetti, Fabio Pinatelli, and Massimo Moranti. But it's because I guess there was a rights issue with the name Goblin at the time.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to say they don't need to be credited.
No. So I think
we can tell.
Yeah. But they had said because Goblin had broken up in 1982,
Uh-huh.
and I guess some members were still using the name for different reasons.
Got it.
But they felt it was right to come back together to return for Argento's return to
Love it.
giallo.
Yeah.
They had scored Deep Red for him in 1975, and then, of course, Goblin scored Suspiria. They did also Dawn of the Dead, which Argento produced,
Okay.
Yeah.
and many others, but they wanted a different style. They wanted something more electronic, something more cool, they said.
Something you could do cocaine to.
Sure. I was dance to, but
Yeah.
you
Or
know,
dance.
whatever.
Well, it
Or
leads
both.
to that. Yeah.
But you do hear what sounds like a synthesizer at the beginning. It's actually what I come to understand is a voice that is altered.
Okay.
But what it's saying is paura, which is Italian for fear.
Oh,
All right.
I like it even more.
Yeah. But as the music continues and a simmering organ joins the fray, we cut to a shaking shot of a bridge in New York City, where through the beams of the bridge, we find Peter Neal, played by Anthony Franciosa, riding his bicycle in a sky blue tracksuit.
Imagine being brave enough to ride your bike right there.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Just looking at him, I was like, oh my God.
I will say the shaky shots of him kind of lend to this feeling of being watched
Okay.
or being stalked.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not happening just yet. It may be happening in another area we'll get to.
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a really cool visual cue.
Right.
Yeah.
So Anthony Franciosa, our main guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I you know what I mean? I wanted to see what of course, what all he's been in, and he did A Hatful of Rain in 57, A Face in the Crowd in 57 as well, and then City Hall in 96.
Oh.
Yeah, he's got a lot of stuff that he had done, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh man, there's just so much."
He has such a recognizable face.
Yeah.
And a presence.
Oh yeah.
He does. And he doesn't look like him. I will preface it by saying this, but for me, I don't know why he was giving James Caan
Okay.
so much in this for me.
Is it because he was also a writer in Misery?
Could be. Could be. But he reminded me of him so much. And I watched this interview with Daria Nicolodi.
Mm-hmm.
She was talking about how much of a gentleman he was, how kind he was, how much she liked him and working with him. And she even liked his wife. And they both really loved Tennessee Williams and both had theater backgrounds. And so in between, when they would take breaks, they would bond over that. And they had kind of formed this friendship. And there was some alluding that maybe Dario Argento wasn't thrilled about that.
I will tell you, I did hear, because I listened to the commentary track with Argento, and there was an interviewer that was asking him about these things, and he was like, so what was it? And it was right here on the scene. He was like, what was it like working with Anthony Franciosa? And Argento goes, we worked together for about 3 months. I don't really remember. That was all.
Oh wow.
And that was it. That was the only thing he said about this dude.
Damn.
I just kind of there was a vibe, maybe a jealousy thing, but also she said that Argento would be upset because, and this is her explanation of it, but she said that Argento gets very bothered and annoyed by actors and he doesn't like working with actors that constantly want to talk about the character or get direction from their director.
What?
It's an interesting.
Yeah.
She goes, I feel like he should have been an actor himself, but that he gets very annoyed by them. And I guess just their processes were very different. And then the fact that maybe he's getting a little close with your partner, right? So that's really, really funny. But it seemed like there was a little bit of tension. And there's even a moment of catharsis that Daria Nicolodi talks about, but I can't talk about it until way later.
Oh, right.
But apparently there was some tension there. Also, though, I kind of fell down a rabbit hole because in that interview she had mentioned that he was married to Shelley Winters. I don't think at the time, but prior. And so she had mentioned that. And I was like, what is up with this dude? And so I kind of fell down. He had like 4 wives, I think. Not at once, but.
I was like, goddamn.
And he was trying to date Daria Nicolodi?
Moving in on. No. But he was apparently a very passionate civil rights activist.
Hey.
And he had like fought for desegregation and like did a drive for it or something. I just thought that was really cool, and I wanted to mention that.
There was something about Peter Neal as a character that he comes off as almost inherently likable.
Yeah.
And maybe part of that could be from the actor who's playing him.
Maybe, because I mean, from all accounts, I guess, except for
well, he doesn't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like, it could have been great. I don't fucking remember.
I don't know. I don't care.
I don't know her. Also, though, before you move on, while we're still talking about introducing Peter Neal, I did get distracted by the whole James Caan thing. But the original actor that was supposed to play Peter Neal, and tell me if this would not be a completely different fucking movie, okay? Christopher Walken.
Oh, that would have been.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot of fun, though.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It would have amplified that aspect completely, I think.
Amazingly.
And can he do his own dubbing as well?
I hope.
Yeah.
I certainly hope so.
But would it be too much? Like, would you just pay attention to him the whole time?
Probably.
It's good he's the lead. Because I will say I did hear on the commentary track with the film historians and writers, they were saying that Dario Argento often, like always, went really lofty and A-list with his first choices. And so in Christopher Walken at that time,
Yeah.
And what, 82?
Yeah, I'm like, when was The Deer Hunter? Dude was...
Yeah.
Before.
You know? So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it would have been fun, but again, he would, like you said, he already big at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, that would have been something.
Yeah.
But we follow Peter uneasily for a little while before he takes his ride from the sidewalk to the street, larger vehicles honking and passing him until he spies a large sign up ahead leading him in the direction of John F. Kennedy International Airport, which is only a quarter of a mile away. We cut to Peter arriving at the airport, pedaling to a stop just behind a black Rolls-Royce, which parks in the drop-off lane. This is actually filmed at JFK Airport in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I had read that the production was aided by William Lustig, who you might remember, we talked about him a little bit because he made the original Maniac.
Oh, all right.
Oh.
But he actually helped Dario Argento in 1980 with locations for Inferno.
Oh, very nice.
But John, played by Marino Mazzi, steps out of the driver's seat to greet Peter at the trunk of the car, who shakes his hand gratefully, thanking him in advance for taking care of everything while he's away. John opens the trunk, retrieving a leather duffel bag and handing it to Peter before passing a large matching suitcase over to an airport attendant wheeling a cart. John wishes Peter a safe flight, and Peter alerts the attendant of his destination, Flight 401 to Rome.
Listen, when he pulled up at this airport, I was like, this is just the start of your day.
Yeah.
That bike ride that he took, if it were me and I could ride a bike, that would be my whole day.
Yeah.
The flight's tomorrow.
Yeah. We got to move it. It's not happening.
I did think it was funny because we did see him riding on the sidewalk when he was on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see him on the street, and it's like, did this car just drive in front of you slow so that you could make your own way to the fucking airport?
That's it. He really wanted to ride the bike.
He's like, I'm going to be on this plane for like 20 hours. No exercise.
Yeah.
I did hear that because you see as he leaves with the attendant, he just like kind of throws his bike to the Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
Apparently the owner of the Rolls Royce in real life was fucking pissed because he scratched the side of the car. But I guess friends. So he had two enemies on set.
Talk about a hostile work environment.
But the two of them rush across the street, past a line of parked taxis, and coming a little too close to being run over by an airport shuttle.
Yes.
I was like, God damn. But once inside the airport, Peter makes a beeline for the nearest restroom, changing from his tracksuit into a more presentable light blue button-down shirt, black slacks, and a tan sports coat. An announcement squelches through an overhead speaker, instructing passengers for Flight 401 to board at Gate 7, and we cut to Peter with his carry-on bag making his way down an escalator. Before he can make his way to the proper gate, another announcement comes over the speaker, specifically requesting passenger to Rome, Peter Neal, to the information desk. Cutting through the crowd gathered at the desk, Peter alerts the uncredited airline employee of his presence, asking if there's a message for him. He learns that there is and is directed to a phone at the other end of the desk, discovering that there is a phone call for him. He drops his bag on the ground and walks over to take the call, which, leaving your bag unattended at the airport?
Yes!
I don't know how often you travel, Peter.
It seems like pretty often.
Yeah. But as he holds the very red phone to his ear, the tone of his voice changes immediately when he realizes who is on the other end. Red is such a prevalent and important color in this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can almost make connections to it through the things that you see, things that maybe are about to happen, or things that are connected to other instances of this color appearing.
Yeah.
But the camera arcs around Peter as he drags the base of the telephone across the desk, attempting to have as much privacy as possible in the bustling building. He speaks quietly but firmly into the phone, telling someone called Jane on the other end that the reason he hasn't seen her for 6 weeks is because he is interrupted at every turn, and he calmly tells Jane a few times to just take it easy. Preoccupied by the phone call, Peter doesn't notice a woman, played by Monica Misani, standing by the information desk, eyeing the luggage that he left behind. Peter tells Jane that his plane has been called and that he's gonna hang up on her. He repeats this, and it finally registers with Jane on the other end. Peter stands silent for a moment before relenting. Yeah, tomorrow. I'll try to call you tomorrow, before hanging up the phone. We cut to where Peter's bag once sat in the middle of the floor, only now we see that there is nothing there.
That's on you, man.
Yeah.
It
like,
really
straight
is.
I don't know. He's like, well, somebody will watch that.
Yeah, he literally just like, oh, and fuck this, and then took off towards the phone.
Clearly, I mean, we saw him fuck up that car with his bike.
Yeah.
He did.
Clearly, he's used to being taken care of.
I guess.
But I'm like, dude, that's like rule one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But Peter searches around for it, confusedly stumbling around until he accidentally bumps into another passenger at the information desk and apologizes. But the woman who eyed his bag suspiciously, however, walks through the airport empty-handed. But when she passes the closed folding door of a phone booth, she stops momentarily to knock on it twice before continuing onward. The door of the phone booth opens, and out steps Jane McCarrow, played by Veronica Lario. We'll have a little more on her later because there is something very important that happened in her life that did affect cuts of this film.
Oh.
Okay.
As soon as she stepped out, I was like, so that's Jane.
Yes.
And I guess her network of spies or something.
She's very connected.
What the fuck?
Because that knock was a code.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But in a white fur coat and her hair flowing over her shoulders, Jane watches wistfully as Peter locates his bag, which was merely moved to the other side of the information desk.
Somebody moved that.
Yeah.
It was so far. It's not like somebody could have been walking by and accidentally kicked it or something. Somebody took it and put it down. Mm-hmm. And he is so unbothered.
Yeah.
Like he's not suspicious. He's not upset.
I'd want to check it. I'd be afraid that someone put something in there.
Yes.
And I'm going onto a plane.
And he's just like, oh, there you are.
Or at least ask them at the desk, be like, did one of you guys move this over here?
Something.
Did y'all?
He's like, I'm late.
Yeah.
But overcome with emotion, Jane places a pair of sunglasses over her eyes with her left hand, a golden band resting on her ring finger. She combs her hair from her face as she watches Peter walk farther and farther away, boarding his flight to Rome with his leather duffel bag in his hand. Jane watches from the window where the suspicious woman stands next to her, placing a cigarette into her mouth and lighting it, as the camera arcs around Jane, her ruby lips parting into a smile as Peter's plane ascends into the sky.
So we're already establishing some things here.
Yeah.
But also that was the biggest pack of cigarettes I've ever seen.
She came prepared.
Yeah.
She did.
She smokes in celebration. But we then cut to a street crowded with small cars in front of a department store, and we get on-screen text reading, Rome. Inside the store, Elsa Mani, played by Anya Peroni, browses clothing items on a rack. I recognized her immediately because she has a very, very striking appearance in Argento's Inferno.
Okay.
And I also believe she was in Fulci's House by the Cemetery.
Oh.
All right.
She's worked with quite a few horror masters.
Yeah.
But she looks through the window and she realizes an uncredited man wearing a suit is staring at her from outside. Clearly unsettled, Elsa just pushes the items back onto the rack, walking away from it and deeper into the department store. She continues browsing various items as Muzak plays over the store radio, but she stops when she notices shelves lined with copies of Peter Neal's Tenebrae. I did want to point out the music that's on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
It is a reuse of the music that Goblin did for Dawn of the Dead for the European release of it. It's perfect for them all.
Yeah.
But there's a label on the cover of the novel which boasts in Italian, Il giallo dell'anno, forse del decennio, or thriller of the year, or maybe the decade.
Ooh.
Okay.
Elsa picks up 2 copies, flipping through the pages of the first copy on top as she eyes the surrounding patrons and employees shiftily. But unbeknownst to Elsa, someone is watching her as well, stalking through the perfume aisle, and we take the point of view of an unknown person, breathing heavily and spying Elsa through the items arranged on the highest shelf.
I didn't remember Michael Myers coming to Rome, but good for him.
Well, I mean, he took a break after Halloween too.
Yeah, he had to travel.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't even need me for Halloween 3?
See ya.
Not to give anything away, there's a lot of times in this film where we take the point of view of a stalker or a killer.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We'll say. I feel like, and it happens a lot in giallo films because you have to kind of keep this element of mystery.
Right.
You see a pair of black gloves. Sometimes they're shot at an angle. Sometimes they're yours.
Yeah.
You know? I think that this aids in the commentary that Argento was attempting when it comes to this idea of art and what it inspires. And to put you in the role of the killer is also kind of what the criticisms were for Argento in his work.
Yeah.
Because they were taking all of the things that you see in his films and they were painting him as the worst of it. Which, again, I don't think that you should consume art that way.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you should paint the artist as their art. Art is expression.
Yeah.
It takes you places,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes taboo places. And I think to correlate that with the mindset or behavior of the artist who created it is very short-sighted.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we all understood Jason's mom when we went to Camp Crystal Lake and that happened.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
We were her for a bit.
Yeah, and that was fine.
But suddenly.
Yeah. I'm the bad guy.
But when Elsa doesn't think anyone is watching her, she drops the second copy of Tenebrae into her purse as she facetiously eyes the first copy again before placing it back on the shelf.
I was like, oh, that's why she grabbed it.
Like, that's not for her friend?
No.
But she attempts to exit the store, but is immediately accosted by the department store manager, played by Ennio Girolami.
He was waiting.
Yeah. And you saw him leaning over the counter earlier.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's waiting.
Yes.
But he seizes her arm, interrogating her on the contents of her bag. Elsa plays dumb, denying that there's anything in her purse as the manager drags her over to a checkout counter. Her bag opens as she attempts to wrench it away from him, and the copy of Tenebrae falls on the floor.
Who put that in there?
Yeah.
A department store clerk, played by Francesca Viscardi, scoops the book up and hands it to the manager, who asks Elsa if she has a receipt for the item. Elsa lies that she was going to the cashier to pay for it, but the manager reminds her that she said she didn't have any book in her purse.
Fuck.
This is when Elsa asks, "What is this? Who the fuck are you?" Which is wild.
Yeah.
But she insists that she was on her way to pay for it. But the manager insists that she follow him into his office at the back of the store, and they leave the clerk behind. But through the window of the manager's office, the manager sits at his desk, opening a large ledger as Elsa stands nervously on the other side. The manager reads from its pages, "Elsa Mani, 12 convictions for shoplifting."
Oh, damn.
You're terrible.
Yeah.
Dude, 12.
Stop doing it.
3 or 4, I was going to be like, oh, come on. But 12, holy shit.
He tells her rightfully that she should have learned by now.
He's right.
Yeah.
But Elsa leans over his desk seductively, reaching over the incriminating ledger to tease the fingers of his hand with hers. She flirtatiously urges him to listen, and after reminding him that it was just a paperback for Christ's sake, she offers to give him her address for later, or any time. She pleads with him to give her a break before rudely asking, "You're not gay, are you?"
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's
What
like,
the
Jesus.
fuck?
What the hell? Also, pussy for a paperback is wild.
Yeah.
But
that-
I respect it.
It's a good book.
It must be a great book.
It's a bestseller.
I was like, is this the new Paul Tremblay? 'Cause-
I feel like it's a bit late to call for decorum, but calm down.
but I'm doing it anyway.
But the manager just leans in closer, asking Elsa where she lives. And Elsa answers that she lives here in Rome, number 14, Villa della Camina. The manager just smirks, writing her address down with the quickness, repeating it out loud as she confirms it. He then tosses the copy of Tenebrae back into her purse and hands it to her.
He said it is only a paperback.
Yeah, well, I mean.
When he put it back in her purse, I fucking cackled. I was like, that's hilarious.
But the camera pulls back from the window as Elsa exits the office and the department store, hitching a ride home outside on the back of a motorcycle. But we return to the skies, finding Peter fast asleep on Flight 401. The voice of the uncredited pilot announces to the passengers that they're just passing over Greenland and are expected to arrive in Rome in approximately 5 hours. The camera dips down from Peter's copy of The Hound of the Baskervilles resting in his lap to focus in on his leather duffel bag parked under his seat. I'm very concerned.
Yeah.
Yes. That is a Sherlock Holmes book. And that's interesting because there's a very great quote in this film that was stolen from Sherlock Holmes. But we'll get there.
But on the streets of Rome, through vibrant green trees, we see the motorcyclist let Elsa off, and after thanking him for the ride, she treks down a sidewalk, followed by the camera in a tracking shot. So there was something that was mentioned by Argento, and I read it in that book from Maitland McDonough.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, there is an idea of Argento's in this film of Rome, and it's not a Rome of the present day in 1982. He says that this Rome, when he was writing it, is a Rome 5 years later, after a terrible event that nobody remembers.
What?
And he said that this Rome is less populated, which we kind of see in a different part of the film where there are deserted streets for really seemingly no reason.
Yeah.
And then the department store was also pretty sparse of people. But it's also interesting to point out that anytime that we go to big cities in films, we often see a lot of landmarks.
Mm-hmm.
We see none of them in this film.
That's true.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting ideas about it. It doesn't really play into the narrative at all. And
Yeah.
it isn't even something that you would really notice unless you were told.
Yeah.
No.
So I don't know the importance of it. I do know that it might lend to that feeling of unease that we get throughout this film from time to time.
Maybe.
Yeah, but if we don't remember what happened, how are we?
Yeah.
gonna-
Yeah. He said people either don't remember or don't want to think about it. And he insinuated it might be an atomic bomb. He insinuated a lot of
the
things.
Yeah.
But I don't really feel that here.
No.
No.
But it is interesting the Rome that we lack and the Rome that we get.
True. And I wonder if that's supposed to explain some of the strange, like you're about to get into right now, some of the things that happen on the street, that it's just like, what was that for?
Yeah.
Yeah. But an uncredited woman in an upstairs window peers down at Elsa through her drapes, somewhat judgmentally. But when Elsa passes by a poorly constructed fence marked with red and white tape, a disheveled and uncredited man lurches through one of the slats, seizing Elsa by the arm. She screams, attempting to break away from him as he just grumbles a disgusting laugh, repeating for her to come here. Elsa is able to pull herself away from his grasp, but he bursts through a door in the fencing, chasing after her. When he grabs hold of her again, Elsa clutches his ragged clothing, kicking him right in the cherries.
Well, that wasn't his purse.
I don't know you. As he holds him in pain, Elsa gives him another swift kick, sending him crashing into a couple of trash cans, toppling them over. She runs for the locked metal gate securing the entrance of her apartment, fumbling for her keys to unlock it as the man rises to his feet. He curses her, screaming that she kicked him, and as he races for her, he bellows that he'll kill her.
Being mad that you got kicked by this woman that you're fucking, like that, you got a lot of fucking nerve.
You started all of this, dude.
Yes.
But thankfully, Elsa unlocks the gate just in time, reaching the other side in safety as the man reaches his hand in for her. She slams the gate on him, and he pulls his shaking hand back, the knuckles of it raw and bloody from Elsa's defensive tactic. He gazes over the fence, cursing in pain as Elsa fearfully makes her retreat into her apartment.
That's what you get, fucker.
I mean-
Yes.
Bothering her. She just came to get home.
Yeah. And good for her.
Yeah.
And she honestly takes this very well. She kind
Yeah.
of just moves on with her day. But that's what I mean. Like, what was this?
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
And you look at this street, it's literally only them on it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and this lady in a window.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you see it, but you don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But from an overhead shot inside of her living room, we watch as Elsa enters her pristine place of residence. Seeing her apartment, I'm like, oh, she's just stealing for the fun of it, because
Yeah.
this place is fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
I did want to talk a little bit about the production design in this film. It was done by Giuseppe Bassan, who also did production design for Deep Red and Suspiria.
Okay.
So he has a history of working with Dario Argento. But the majority of this film is filmed on location in Rome, in real buildings.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like with the exception of one scene that we'll get to later for a very important reason that they had to use a set, and also the scenes in New York.
Okay.
Those are the only places that are not filmed on location in Rome.
That's really cool.
Oh, yeah.
But what he had talked about is wanting to give this world a very bright appearance, and there was an emphasis in the design on the color white, which we see a lot.
Yeah.
And this allows for a lot of the reds to stand out very dramatically. And you even see it in the pale clothing that the characters wear,
Right.
Yeah.
which lends to certain colors standing out when it needs to.
Well, that is the reason it's a giallo, so you kind of need that.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. I can't anymore.
Are they going to get a complete episode?
No, I'm done. I already quit this show during the intro, I think.
Right. This is for fun.
Yeah.
This is me being nice.
But catching her breath, Elsa closes the front door behind her, resting against it for a moment before she takes off her high-heeled shoes. Standing barefoot in her living room, she inspects her jacket, previously gripped in the fists of her attacker, and she takes it off before heading into her bedroom. She opens her window, bidding hello to her uncredited neighbor Carla, who stands in the backyard of an adjacent unit. Carla wrings out her laundry, explaining to Elsa that her washing machine just broke. And as the score hums eerily, Carla asks Elsa with a smile if she's okay. And Elsa answers somewhat hesitantly that she's fine, thanking Carla before closing her window. She snags a green bottle from her refrigerator before switching on the light in her bathroom and walking in. The camera lingers outside, as after a moment, Elsa returns to her bedroom, now without her skirt and wearing only her button-up shirt. I've gone on record many times, vulnerable thighs during
You have.
times of fear.
You don't like it.
No, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea.
But for her to just get so comfortable right away, that still too, it's like, dude, shit just happened like 10 minutes ago.
I guess that does lend credence to whatever version of Rome that this is supposed to be.
Okay.
Because I've never been to Rome, but I don't think that
No.
this is just something that you shake off on the way home from shoplifting
No,
or whatever you're doing.
I'd need some time. I don't just grab a Perrier from the fridge
No.
and take off my pants.
And even her telling the neighbors, she's like, no, I'm good. It's
Yeah.
like, what?
Be careful outside, though.
Yeah.
She could at least warn.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
If you
Jesus.
go out,
Yeah.
be careful.
Doesn't even call the police.
No.
Yeah.
Well, she might have reasons not to call the police.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And they're like, you again? But she returns to the living room, attempting to use the telephone that she finds there. But when she doesn't hear a dial tone, she frantically presses the switch hook. But before she can get to the bottom of it, the miscreant man from earlier reappears just outside of her apartment window, startling her. Maybe she was calling the police then.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But Elsa backs away toward her bedroom. But when she reaches the doorway, she's suddenly grabbed from behind, a black-gloved hand reaching over her mouth and muffling her cries of fear. The man peers from outside through the window, his view obstructed by Elsa's sheer curtains and his injured hand resting on the glass as Elsa is pulled into her bedroom. She's slammed against the wall, and the black-gloved assailant holds a straight razor to her throat, a small amount of blood leaking from a fresh wound in her flesh. The assailant seizes Elsa's copy of Tenebrae, tearing pages from it and shoving them into her mouth to silence her screams, all the while whispering, "Dirty little thief." Are you loss prevention? What the fuck is this? It's a little too thorough.
Right.
Yeah.
Take the book back.
Yeah. I don't want it.
My thought was, eat it till you choke, you sick, twisted fuck.
You're right.
Misery.
But as the man outside peers through an opening in the curtain and runs away, the attacker raises the straight razor. A tear drops from Elsa's fearful eye as the razor is brought down in a slash. The blood-stained pages from Tenebrae fall from Elsa's mouth as she slinks lifeless to the floor. With her throat sliced, her pale skin and white shirt now marred in red, a light flashes above her as the murderer snaps a photograph of their dirty deed.
Done dirt cheap. I R.I.P. Elsa.
Yeah.
Kind of a legend, if I'm being honest. I did not expect her to get got so quickly. We just met
No.
her.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, I was like, is that the store manager? I know you gave him the address.
Yeah.
But I was like,
True.
damn, he took that shit personally.
Yeah.
He did not appreciate
No.
it. He said, not in my store.
Your inventory is not that important.
Yeah, no.
Jesus. And the film does a really good job of kind of setting people up to suspect them
Yeah.
because this is the first of many.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I did want to kind of talk about the cinematography in this film. There's quite a few really, really interesting shots and uses of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to make mention of the fact that so much of this film takes place during the daytime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even murders like this, it's taking place in bright sunlight.
Yeah.
This film was shot by Luciano Tovoli, who also shot Suspiria for Argento. And whenever they met to talk about this film, he told Tovoli that he wanted to do something different. And despite the title of Tenebrae meaning darkness, he's like, let's go the opposite way of it completely.
Okay.
That's very interesting. I think that, it feels like 20 years ago that we talked about Midsummer, but I'm sure we talked about it on that episode too.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of this unexpected, like you're supposed to be safe in the daylight.
Yeah, but you know what, though, thinking about it and you saying that does make it, like you're saying, babe, it does make it more scarier that it's in the daylight.
Yeah.
But if we knew anything about when this was set... then it would be like, oh, that's why no one's reacting to daylight stuff.
I did see a really, really cool quote from Argento that he had mentioned about doing this in daylight. And even the night scenes are very brightly lit.
Yeah.
But he had said, and this is a quote, "In the gloom, one can hide what one wants to reject, what one doesn't dare to show. But we are ill at ease in the harsh glare. We have everything right in front of us."
Ooh.
Okay.
It's like, God damn.
Yeah.
And honestly, that idea really plays into what we'll learn about certain characters.
Yeah.
But I was really interested to read that the references of natural lighting for Tivoli, they watched episodes of Columbo, first of all. But the big influence was Zhukovsky's Possession.
Really?
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
Argento loved it. It was actually released the year before this.
Very nice.
Yep.
And it was his intention to kind of create that same atmosphere, and he called it very realistic lighting, and it's true.
Yeah.
But at the airport in Rome, Bulmer, Peter's agent, played by John Saxon, waits by the gate, surrounded by uncredited journalists and photographers.
Hey, it's Nancy's dad.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, we just saw you.
Firstly, John Saxon, just a little commotion for John Saxon.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Every single thing that he's in, he just plays his part so well.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to, of course, make mention, he has the distinction of appearing in Mario Bava's The Girl Who Knew Too Much in 1963, which many people consider to be the first giallo film.
Wow.
I consider Blood and Black Lace, but it's a different conversation. But Argento on commentary, he said, and this I did not know, Italian was the language spoken primarily in John Saxon's home growing up.
Wow.
Okay.
His birth name is actually Carmina Orico.
Where do you get John Saxon from?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That's
It's
a
great.
great
No, it
name,
is.
though.
Yeah, stage name.
Yeah.
And I never knew that.
Me
No.
either.
But Argento, though he had not much to say about his leading man, he said that John Saxon was a great man.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
But Bulmer holds a stack of papers in his hand, asking around if everyone got a copy of the press release. And when all the journalists remain clustered in their own conversations, Bulmer shrugs it off sarcastically with a, "Nice try anyway, Bulmer." But making her way through the crowd is Tilda, a journalist played by Mirella D'Angelo. She greets Bulmer, asking if she's too late, and Bulmer assures her that she isn't, but she waves him away when he tries to hand her a press release. It's like Marge's Sundays. It's like, why does everybody hate my press releases? But passengers start to make their way through the gate, and the crowd of journalists spring to life, along with Tilda, calling out excitedly for Peter, who makes his way through the group of travelers. Tilda, clutching her notebook and a copy of Time magazine, forces her way through the crowd to greet Peter, who is overjoyed to see her. He kisses her sweetly on both of her cheeks as they embrace, and holding her chin, he sweetly tells her that she's getting prettier every time he sees her. Tilda smiles as Peter puts his arm around her and asks, "Are you still writing nice things about me?" Bulmer walks towards Peter with a smile as the journalists continue to swarm his client.
So Peter's famous then.
Very famous.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important aspect of this story, and especially going in with the idea of the way that art is received.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you have this massive group of people, this bestseller, who are just reading and consuming it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm doing a lot of shrugging.
Yeah. They can feel it.
Okay.
They can feel it.
But through the eyes of the murderer, breathing heavily, we step off of an elevator and make our way through an empty hallway, creeping across the carpeted floor to a large wooden door. Our black-gloved hand stretches outward, sliding an envelope under the crack in the bottom of the door, and when it reaches the other side, we see that it's marked in large, bold letters, Personal, Peter Neal. But Peter sits on a couch in the lounge of the airport, flanked by uncredited journalists fawning over him and surrounded by copies of his books on nearby tables. I understand it's a press junket, but it is really funny that they just probably bought a box of his books to this thing.
Yeah.
To just litter around the table. Maybe for photos, I don't know.
Probably.
But he answers that it takes him about a month to get his notes together, and the actual writing of the novels takes about 3, followed by 2 months of revisions, rewrites, and proofs. At this point, Tilda joins the proceedings, taking a seat on an adjacent couch, and after Peter greets her warmly, he continues that after 3 books in a row, his work hasn't stopped for almost 2 years now. But after he puts on his glasses, Peter looks up to see Cristiano Berti, played by John Steiner, resting casually against a wall, his suited arms crossed and a smirk resting just beneath his thin mustache. But Tilda, with her pen in hand and her notebook opened, declares Tenebrae to be a sexist novel, asking Peter why he despises women so much. Peter is taken aback, but remains jovial, insisting that he doesn't find Tenebrae to be sexist at all. Tilda elaborates, women as victims, ciphers, the male heroes with their hairy macho bullshit. This gets the attention of Bulmer, who stands nearby in conversation, but breaks away from it to look over at Tilda. She asks Peter how he can say that Tenebrae isn't sexist, but Peter takes off his glasses, somewhat wounded, asking Tilda sincerely what's the matter with her, reminding her that she's known him for 10 years, ever since she studied in New York. He says that she knows very well that but Tilda interrupts, asserting that she's talking about his work. Berti rolls his eyes as Peter settles into his chair, mulling over Tilda's question, before asking if she'd like him to tell her that he supported the Equal Rights Amendment. Tilda accepts this, but tells Peter to explain the books then, asking him if he writes to a fixed pattern, or if his publishers tell him that this kind of sexism sells copies.
God damn.
Yeah.
She's eating his ass up.
Everybody else is like, you're God's gift to writing. You were.
Yeah.
And 2 seconds ago, they were like, mwah, mwah. I was like, fuck.
The tone of the room has changed.
Yeah, and
She's
you were
letting him
just
have
nice to me a minute ago.
Yeah.
5 seconds
Yeah.
ago.
And she makes the distinction. She's like, I'm talking about your
Yeah,
work.
this
Yeah.
isn't about you. Yeah, she did.
But Bulmer finally makes his way over, offering a solution, a one-on-one interview between Peter and Tilda, suggesting that it could help Peter really come to grips with the attitude of Tilda's magazine. He reminds Tilda that Peter just got off of a plane, which is really funny.
Yeah.
It's like, he's not ready for this.
Yeah.
He's tired. He thought everyone would be nice. So.
Yeah.
He is, and again, fulfilling his role as agent. He did
is.
come over and put out the
Yeah.
fire.
He is. But before he can continue, Tilda relents reluctantly, accepting the one-on-one interview in the future. As Berti looks on with a judgmental eye, Bulmer brings the interview to a close, alerting his client that he thinks it's time to go. Peter rises from his seat, bidding the reporters arrivederci, as Bulmer thanks all gathered journalists for their attention and interest, and giving them permission to drink the bar dry. He passes a business card to Tilda, instructing her to call tomorrow to set up the meeting with Peter, and bids the reporters goodbye. As Peter takes his last sip of water, Tilda playfully reaches for Peter's jacket, sweetly telling him that her mother was hoping that he would call her. Peter asks Tilda to tell her mother that he'd love to see her, but he leans in closer to her, asking, "You know that you're getting very tense?" Tilda just smiles, remarking that she's learning. But as Peter parts company with a smile, he joins Bulmer, who, after dropping a homophobic slur at Tilda's expense, says that her magazine just wants Peter's balls because they haven't got their own.
I was like, John Saxon.
Yeah.
It sucks because you immediately want to like John Saxon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was gross.
It
Yeah.
was.
But Peter just laughs it off as Bulmer places a black trilby hat on his head, remarking that he found it in Rome. Peter asks if he moves his head around, won't it slip off? Bulmer demonstrates that it won't, whipping his hair back and forth to prove it.
I mean, wow, it really stayed.
It did.
really did. This did make me flash on Nick Cage at the beginning of Face Off.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit off mic earlier. I was really expecting more to come of this hat because we talked about this hat quite a bit.
Comes up.
It's it's a really nice hat.
It is.
It looks really good on him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I felt like it was a lot of buildup for
Yeah.
for kind of
It doesn't lead to the red herring you think
Right.
yeah.
of somebody telling the police, well, he was wearing,
He was wearing a really fucking cool hat.
it was fresh. It was brand new.
And it didn't slip off his head at all.
Nope.
And I mean, it makes me think the killer in Blood and Black Lace wore a pretty sweet ass hat too.
That's right.
But after this very spirited demonstration, Bertie stands awkwardly within earshot of this conversation, seemingly waiting for the right time to approach, but he never does. Interesting.
Very. And I didn't notice how awkward he was standing back there until I watched it again before we sat down.
Yeah, he was back there kind of creepy, just
A little
standing
bit.
there.
A little bit.
But outside the airport, Bulmer stands with Peter, reminding him that his book has been #1 on the bestseller list in Rome for the last 12 weeks. Peter is astonished as Bulmer asks, "Pleased with your agent?" Peter then rattles off just as many positive adjectives as he can muster, and Bulmer pleads for him to continue saying nice things about him. But Peter looks around, asking where Anne, his secretary, is. Bulmer praises Anne's work, telling Peter that in just 6 days, she's got all of Rome wired for Peter and has found him a great place to stay, too. Peter remarks that Anne was supposed to be here to meet him, but Bulmer shares that she's downstairs. He says that he didn't want people thinking that Peter had an entourage. He comments that they love Peter's books, but they hate success.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
After remarking how interesting that is, Peter asks Bulmer about the guy that he saw standing in the corner of the room earlier, the guy who never said a word. After confirming his attributes, Bulmer recognizes him as Cristiano Berti, a book reviewer for Channel 1 TV, who happens to be a big fan of Peter Neal. As Bulmer whisks Peter away, he shares that he'll actually be taping a show with Berti on Thursday. But out on the street in front of the airport, Bulmer waves a car over to pick them up. Riding passenger is Anne, Peter's secretary, played by frequent Argento collaborator Daria Nicolodi, who can hardly wait to exit the vehicle to greet Peter with a hug.
I don't know if it was just me. And maybe this speaks to maybe their friendship and chemistry that Dario Argento didn't really care for. But immediately my note is, okay, is that just his assistant? And does Jane know? Because I don't know what the situation is with Jane.
No.
But it's not good.
Yeah.
And seeing these two together, it's like, okay, what is this? What's going on?
And with the way that he was like, and where's Anne? She said she was supposed
She was
to
going
be
to
here.
meet me
Yeah.
at the... It's like, okay,
All right.
what's going on?
For me, it was that. The urgency was like, well, where is she, though?
Yeah.
So real quick, Daria Nicolodi, she was very comfortable in this movie. And like you can tell her performance is great. But so I got curious and I went and looked, and I know you said it a little earlier, T, but she is in Argento movies.
Yeah.
It looks like she did Deep Red in 75, Phenomena in 85, and Mother of Tears in 07.
Which honestly is because they were not together anymore at that time.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's why she wasn't as kind about his later films.
Well-
when I was...
Mother of Tears made me cry. I'll tell you.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's not good.
Really?
It's really not good. But also to point out that Asia Argento is her daughter with Daria Argento.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
But yeah, she was like a mainstay. They were partners at the time of filming, as Nay alluded to with all the drama.
Yeah.
But I think, and again, she does such a good job in this film. On one of the commentaries, they were like, well, because obviously there were tensions because of what happened with Suspiria.
Right.
Because she has a story credit on Suspiria, and there were kind of disagreements over how much of the story credit was.
Oh.
And so I heard a lot of stories both ways here or there. And we did talk about her kind of coming up with this idea of those witches in the school based on her experiences going to school herself.
With
Right.
the witches.
Yeah. With the school full of
Well,
witches.
yeah.
This was an autobiographical.
I think she came up with most of it.
Yeah. But one of the commentary tracks, they had said that she kind of like has no presence in this role or doesn't seem like she wants to be here and all this stuff. The reality was that she, at least from what I heard from different interviews, is that she kind of didn't want to be playing this role.
Yeah, that's what I learned in that interview that I watched with her. She wanted Jane's role.
Really?
And they told her yes. And she said that she felt like because of her association with Argento that they kind of took her for granted. And they were like, yeah, you can have this role. Actually, no, we're going to give it to her. You can do this one. Because she found Anne to be kind of boring. She didn't want to play Anne. She thought that Jane was a more interesting character, even though we see her less.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she seemed she wasn't happy about that, but she said that she did her best, and I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
Neither do I. My thing with her is I feel like Anne becomes more interesting because of her performance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jane obviously has a lot more going on, which we'll get to later. But I feel like her performance elevates Anne as a character.
Yeah.
But one thing I did hear as well on that commentary track is they kind of compared Dario Argento and Daria Nicolodi's relationship to like the level of attention that like David Beckham and Posh Spice.
Victoria
Beckham. I'm aware of her name.
Posh Spice.
Yeah.
That was how I met her, was Posh Spice.
That's how we all met her.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But that level of coverage in the Italian press.
Wow.
And so the idea of Argento making a film, it's like you have to put her in it.
Yeah.
And so he was also pressured by his father, one of the producers, that they're like, you got to put her in here somehow. And she didn't want to.
I was going to say, how about we ask her if she wants to?
Yeah. And I will admit, I don't know when that commentary track was recorded. I don't know that David Beckham and Victoria Beckham are the height of tabloid coverage. these days.
Forever. Yeah, always and forever.
But the driver of the car that has brought Anne is Gianni, played by Christian Borromeo. Bulmer introduces him to Peter as a future agent in their Rome office. But in the meantime, he's here to look after Peter during his stay. So he's an intern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter jokes that Bulmer currently pays him in promises, right? It's like, so he's definitely an intern.
For sure.
But Bulmer just purses his lips in annoyance before shrugging it off and reminding Peter that he'll see him tonight. Peter then turns his attention to Anne, but before he can begin a proper conversation, he remembers that he brought her a present, but it's inside of his bag.
What's in the bag? I'm like, it's been leading up to this since we met him, honestly.
Mm-hmm. They walk to the trunk of the car where Gianni hands Peter his duffel bag, Peter promising that it's just a little thing. But when he unzips his bag, he finds the contents inside covered in black ink and a rather expensive-looking watch smashed to pieces inside of its broken case. Anne reacts in sympathetic shock as Peter asks, "Who could have done such a thing?"
Listen, I don't know Peter's business like that. I can already guess who would have done.
And again, he forgets that he left his bag unattended at the airport.
Although it was unattended for about a minute and a half.
And I didn't see that lady with like a box of ink or anything. She came prepared.
Whatever they did it quick.
Well, she had a trench coat on.
That's
She
true.
did.
But before the scene ends, we get another tight shot of his destroyed timepiece. And I imagine that was Anne's gift.
Yeah.
I'd be mad too. It's like, I bet that was for me.
Yeah.
But we cut to elevator doors sliding open as Peter, Anne, and Gianni step out and into a very familiar hallway. They approach a large wooden door just to the left, and we watch from inside, the entryway bathed in blue darkness as the trio enters. But they find a man inside waiting for them at the other end of the room. He asks Peter his name before introducing himself as Captain Germani, a homicide detective played by Giuliano Gemma. A woman exits from Peter's prospective bedroom, Germani introducing her as Inspector Altieri, played by Carola Stagnato. He tells Peter that they didn't wish to disturb him, but his door was opened when they arrived, which Altieri confirms, which I feel like it was not open.
I need someone besides the two of you to confirm that.
But Germani apologizes before bluntly sharing, "A girl was killed 5 hours ago." He says her name was Elsa Mani, and she was an inveterate shoplifter. Like, God damn.
She's dead!
Yeah, you didn't need to do that.
You don't need to
Speak ill of the dead. And I don't know what that would mean to Peter at all.
Yeah, nothing.
Well, she stole a lot. Like, jeez.
That was just so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Germani asks Peter if he knew the deceased, but as Peter drops his bag and belongings on a nearby table, he shares that this is his first time in Rome. Peter takes off his jacket, and Germani reveals that Elsa died of 4 deep wounds: throat, chest, and suffocation, and her mouth was stuffed with pages from Peter's novel, Tenebrae. No, it wasn't. Those pages were on the floor. There's no way that you knew that.
And you've only said 2 wounds.
Yeah, he's like, well, suffocation is 2 wounds. 1, 2, 3, 4.
What the fuck?
You're a terrible detective.
It counts.
But this shocks Peter to hear it, and Altieri hands Germani a copy of the novel as he explains that they came here to see if Peter knew of any connections. This is wild that they would come to him first.
Yeah.
Yes.
This book is a bestseller.
Yeah.
He makes a point in a second
Yes.
that I was like, exactly. Why the hell would you come to him?
Yeah.
Peter takes a seat, Anne offering to get him a drink of water, which he thanks her for kindly. Gianni then takes Peter's bags to the bedroom as Germani apologizes again for the intrusion, admitting that they were just about to leave until they heard the elevator. Peter states that he didn't know Elsa, and he apologizes that he can't be of any help to the investigation. But as he takes a glass of water from Anne and thanks her, Germani forces a photograph of Elsa's dead and butchered body in front of Peter's face.
Why though?
Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Firstly, again, it's out of line, but Peter's reaction to it, he bats it away and he simply goes, no. Which is...
We're not doing that.
What the fuck, dude?
I took a plane today, dude. I'm maxed out.
But Anne tells the detectives that she'd offer them something harder, but they don't drink on duty, right? Germani just chuckles, admitting to Anne's surprise that he only drinks on duty, and he asks for a scotch, straight up.
That's fantastic.
But he continues his interrogation of Peter, asking if he just arrived in Rome. Peter takes this to mean that Germani is asking for an alibi, which Peter certainly has, sharing that he landed from New York 2 hours ago. But then he asks this very fair question to the detectives. If someone is killed with a Smith & Wesson revolver, do they go and interview the president of Smith & Wesson?
That.
Yeah.
Germani answers with a wry chuckle, and after accepting the glass of scotch from Anne, he shares that he's read all of Peter's books, except Tenebrae, which he just started last night. But he asks, the book deals with a murder committed with an old-fashioned open razor, right? Peter sits quietly, and before he can answer, Germani pleads with Peter not to tell him who the murderer is, as he hasn't finished the book yet. But he says that Elsa was also killed with a razor, with pages of Tenebrae stuffed in her mouth. But then Germani remembers something else, and he pulls an envelope from his coat pocket, the very same envelope that we saw slid underneath Peter's door, which is addressed to him. Peter snags a letter opener from the desk, and he unfolds the letter. In a tight shot, we see words pasted to the page, cut out disjointedly from various magazines, and it reads, "There was only one answer to the fury that tortured him." Peter rises from his seat in shock, and as Anne joins him to look at the piece of paper, Germani asks, "Isn't that a passage from your book?" Peter admits that it is, and he can't take his eyes off the paper. Germani assures Peter that he respects him and he doesn't want to make his stay in Rome a nightmare, but he says that they're going to need his help. He asks to keep the letter, and Peter hands it to him, but Germani supposes that Peter will get another letter sometime, and then another. He requests that Peter keep them informed on any developments, and Peter agrees. Germani takes a sip of his scotch, calling the flavor beautiful, to which Peter gives a nervous smile. But after Altieri gives Peter their contact card, she and Germani turn to make their exit. But Peter stops them, realizing that there is something else. His travel bag in the bedroom. He motions for Gianni to bring it into the living room, and as the detectives look through it, Peter assures him that when he left New York in the morning, it wasn't like that.
Really?
So I didn't know. They went through my things? But suddenly, the telephone rings and Anne answers it. After a few interrogative hellos, Anne shrugs in confusion, hanging up the silent call. But as he surveys the damage of Peter's belongings, Gianni offers to go out and buy him replacements of whatever he needs, and Anne thanks him for his help, taking him into the bedroom to make a proper list for him. Germani asks if he can take the bag to investigate further, and Peter allows this. But suddenly, the phone rings again. Peter answers it jovially, maybe a little too jovially.
Yeah.
As if nothing's like, hello, it's like, dude.
What? Wake up. What are y'all just talking about?
But he gives his full name to the unknown caller. But his kind greeting is met with a whispering voice on the other end. Not anxiety or fear, but freedom. The caller, in a hushed tone, reminds Peter that he wrote these words, page 46, and he quotes, "Freedom to strike again." As Germani and Altieri look on, Peter urges the caller not to hang up because they have to talk. He snaps to get Germani's attention, ordering him to pick up the phone in the other room, which he rushes to do immediately. The voice whispers, "You told me how, Peter Neal. You and me together. We have just begun." But the voice then asks, "Who's up there with you? I can see a woman. Is that your girlfriend? Maybe she should be next."
Hold up. Like,
Yeah.
why?
That's a little much, I'd say.
Yes.
But we then see a low-angle shot gazing up at Peter's apartment window where he stands with the telephone in his hand, Anne right next to him through the glass. But through the window looking down, however, Peter eyes a phone booth resting in the center of the sidewalk across the deserted street. As Altieri moves Anne aside to join Peter by the phone, the caller adds, "But I've got other plans. You'll like them. Just wait and see." Peter suggests that they should meet. Maybe he could talk to him and explain about the books. The caller assures Peter that they'll meet soon. He can count on it. But Peter watches as Germani rushes from the bedroom, drawing his gun from his holster and running out of the apartment toward the elevator. Altieri joins him as Peter continues his conversation on the phone, remarking, "The girl you killed today, she was..."
Peter.
The caller interrupts in hushed fury, asking Peter how he knows about her and who is with him.
What the fuck, man?
Why would you say
I
that?
know. Why?
You've written enough novels to, I just don't understand. He's like, "I'll tell the killer. I know what I'm doing." The call obviously and very suddenly disconnects. Anne then joins Peter at the window again, and accompanied by tense music, they watch as Germani runs as fast as he can across the street. But as the camera arcs around him on the street level with Altieri, they discover that the phone booth is empty. They cock their guns and split up to search the area. As Altieri stands in the middle of the road, a very distant motorist overreacts and whips his steering wheel to the right, pulling off the road. It's very embarrassing.
Yeah. What the fuck?
And the moment's tense already, but then we flash to this guy and he's like, "Ah! Ah!" And then he pulls off the road and they're like at least 20 yards away from him.
Yeah.
It was unnecessary.
But Altieri reconvenes with Germani, reporting that she couldn't find the Phantom Killer. Germani remarks that he should have a tough male assistant who runs fast instead of Altieri, but Altieri counters that he'd hate it because then he'd have nothing to bitch about. Germani just walks off frustrated. Germani at the start in the apartment seems very sensible and very kind. This surprised me.
Yeah.
But it does seem like they have this kind of bantery relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Was I was surprised as well, but then I was like, well, maybe they're that's their thing.
Mm-hmm.
They give each other shit, just like she said.
Mm-hmm. And they do kind of give off this like buddy cop vibe.
Yeah,
They do.
And especially when he's pulling out the envelope like Columbo's. One more thing. It's clear the influence.
Yeah.
But we suddenly cut to a dark shadow of a mystery figure cast against a wall. Anguished screams escape this person as they clutch their head with both hands. The sound of bubbling water overtakes the room as the camera pans across 2 blue pills resting on a coffee table, along with a glass of water, which is seized by the hand of the shadow person. Their silhouette downs every drop of the liquid. But suddenly, we're viewing what seems to be a flashback or a dream. 4 young men gather in a cabana, watching as Girl on Beach, played by Eva Robbins, sits in front of them, sliding the strap of her white dress down her shoulder. This was another character that was possibly meant to be played by Daria Nicolodi as well.
Oh.
But she steps out of the shelter, walking through the sand in a very red pair of high-heeled shoes, urging the boys to follow her. They made mention on commentary, and it was apparently very important. I don't know much about fashion. I will say that.
Yeah.
But these shoes were designed, according to Argento, by Diego Della Valle, and he's apparently an Italian designer that I guess he's credited in the thing.
Damn.
Oh, damn.
So I guess it's very interesting.
Okay.
They are a beautiful pair of heels.
Yeah.
They are. I want to chime in, but my fashion knowledge extends to Carrie Bradshaw's closet, and maybe she had a pair of those. I'm sure someone would be like, actually, I know about Manolo Blahnik.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
I believe
All right.
there's a man named Lou Baton who also
Makes batons.
yes, and shoes.
Yes.
And shoes. But as they stand idly by, she turns to face them again, teasing them once more with the strap of her dress, pulling it down her shoulder completely to reveal her breasts. She kneels on the ground as 3 of the boys approach her from behind. We only see them from the waist down as she caresses their legs softly, until the 4th boy approaches right in front of her. She gazes up at him as a haunting lullaby plays on the score. The 4th boy raises his hand, slapping the girl across the face. The girl recoils, holding her jaw, looking up at the other 3 boys as the 4th boy takes off running. They promptly tackle him, and the camera follows the girl's red heels as she marches her way over to the downed boy.
Well, dude, we were just fixing to have a very nice picnic, and you fucked this up. What are you doing?
I was like, he did not pass the vibe
No.
check. And honestly, I'm when they follow him over there, I'm waiting for her to death proof him, if I'm being honest.
I mean,
Yeah.
Because fuck you.
we see from his point of view as she approaches, a trickle of blood pouring down her chin. She spits at him, and as the other boys hold his legs open, she kicks him repeatedly in the crotch with the pointed end of her shoe. She then steps on his face as he screams, digging the heel of her shoe into his opened mouth. But the camera pulls back, revealing a wide shot of this scene of comeuppance and humiliation, the 3 boys holding the 4th to the sand, and the girl standing triumphant with her heel down his throat. This sequence crossfades back to the shadow of the person on the wall who struggles to catch their breath.
Real quick before we move on, at the beginning of this sequence, when we do see the shadow on the wall and the cup of water and all that, this made me think so much. There is a scene in Red Dragon that is almost exactly like this.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I love that movie so much. And when I seen this, I was like, I know I've seen that before.
I was like, did I fall asleep and wake up in another movie?
Yeah.
It does come out of nowhere.
Yes.
And it feels, this is almost an air of that surrealism that you were talking about.
Yeah.
It doesn't reach the heights of other films we've talked about or seen, but it does feel so out of place and so like a non sequitur.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, you're like, oh, is this the motivation of the killer?
Right.
Right.
And you start to try to theorize, and you're like, well, who the fuck, all this.
Yeah.
But it's a very important aspect of the film that comes up so much, and we'll talk towards the end where somebody explains a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that it's very effective, and the way that it's shot is very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And the way that it follows these high heels, and they become this symbol of such importance.
Mm-hmm.
The color red, her white dress, so vibrant, the blood down her chin, like it's very striking.
Yeah.
But we cut to a trendy arcade bar, and after spending a little time with an uncredited couple at the bar, a girl asking her boyfriend, Massimo, when he's ever going to take her picture, and he just replies, "Never, sweetheart."
I was like, God damn.
Yeah.
Massimo don't play that.
No. She walks off in a huff, but again, I was like, is this a clue?
Picture.
The last time we saw the killer was the
Yeah.
flash of a photograph.
Yeah.
But in a nearby booth, we find Tilda and her lover, Marion, played by Mirella Banti. Marion steps away from the booth, sauntering over to the arcade cabinets where she finds a muscular man trying to beat his score on Mousetrap. Tilda sips her coffee as Marion leans seductively against the cabinet, whispering something to the man. She opens her light blue shawl to reveal her very sheer top, which barely covers her. But she returns to the booth, covering herself again and remarking to Tilda that the guy is cute. Tilda counters that he's vulgar and cheap, but Marion tells Tilda that she loves her before scolding, "No jealous scenes," reminding Tilda that she promised. Marion says that the guy doesn't have a place, so she's taking him back to theirs. Tilda fumes. Oh, Christ. And Marion asks her what's the matter, reminding her of their agreement. Tilda relents, reluctantly agreeing once again to no ties, but telling Marion that she doesn't have to rub her face in it. Marion responds, "Not your face, honey. Not tonight."
Ouch.
Wow.
That's so rude.
Don't talk to me
Yeah.
ever again.
No.
I'm going to head out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's an arrangement here, and clearly, this arrangement does not work for both of them.
No.
Yeah.
So, this is like, it's difficult to watch, and it only gets worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like from the first meeting that we had with Tilda, you kind of like her.
Yeah.
And you don't want to see her treated like shit like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Marion asks Tilda to just give her an hour, and the camera follows her as she leans in for a kiss. But a very hurt and jealous Tilda can't take her eyes off of the uncredited man to kiss Marion properly, and Marion just leaves the lingering love of her lipstick on Tilda's teeth.
She turned into a robot or something for a second.
She was dissociating.
Yeah.
She was floating above the table.
She had to reset. Something else.
Yeah. Control, Alt, Delete.
Yes.
And honestly, I mean, there's so much tragedy in that moment. This tight shot of this just one-sided kiss.
Yeah.
But Marion announces that she'll see Tilda later before exiting with the uncredited man. But another uncredited man joins Tilda at her table, slinking around the corner and remarking that Tilda looks like a turkey at Christmas time.
What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
I was recently told by a coworker that I looked tired. Don't fucking say that to people.
No.
And I was like, that's up there with the worst things you can say to people. But turkey at Christmas time might also be up there because
Well,
I don't know how to take that.
Yeah.
But I think turkey at Christmas time is a little more folksy than being like, you look tired.
But what does it mean?
I'd rather be a turkey. Look, here's...
I don't know that I would.
I think I absolutely would. I can't believe we're even having this
A
conversation.
jive turkey?
Maybe. It's meaning like, you know, if you're put yourself in the mind of a turkey. It's Christmas time. A lot of people eat turkey, so you look fearful, you look nervous, you look upset. That's what he sees in Tilda's eyes.
Oh.
She's a turkey at Christmas time.
I thought he wanted
better.
to stuff her.
Oh, right. All right.
You win. I'm done.
No, you lose.
I'm not going to top that. He wants to, but I'm not going to.
Jesus.
T.
All right.
T, it's your turn.
Decorum must return.
Christmas.
Yes.
Maybe,
It's Christmas.
Maybe for Christmas.
Have a little decorum for Christmas. Did you guys really, is that really what you thought with this turkey at Christmas time thing?
It doesn't sound like a nice thing to say.
Oh,
I don't know what it means.
I feel like it's more concerned than rude.
Okay. I was confused. I didn't understand.
Well, I didn't like it.
I can tell.
I felt like New York. I'll break your legs.
Batilda greets him somberly, asking him how it's going, to which the man replies that he has an hour, so he'll tell her. He was eavesdropping.
Yeah.
Batilda rolls her eyes before scooting over to converse with the man in the booth. I heard on commentary a lot of people thought that this uncredited man was Cristiano Berti because of the mustache, but it's a completely different person.
It's just a mustache.
Yeah.
He doesn't even look like him.
No. But later that night, Peter returns to his apartment with Anne, commenting what a drag Bulmer's friends are. This made me laugh because Bulmer's like, I'll see you later. And it's like, we don't get to see any of that. But Peter also slags off the food and adds that if there was a World Cup for boredom, Bulmer's friends would win for Italy. No contest.
God damn.
Damn.
But Anne laughs, gathering a folder of documents from a nearby table and excusing herself for the evening. She tells Peter that she'll be back tomorrow morning, but before she can exit, Peter invites her to have a nightcap with him, remarking that it's been one hell of a day. Anne rejoins him, setting down her folders and limiting herself to one drink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Batilda arrives home, the headlights of her car illuminating the incredibly interesting facade of her house. She makes her way inside, taking off her jacket, but she stops at the bottom of the stairs, her back to the steps and leaned against an adjacent door frame when Marion calls out, "Tilda, are you coming up?" Tilda calls her lover a cheap little hooker and says that she wouldn't come upstairs if her life depended on it.
I think that we need to have a long and difficult conversation about the rules and expectations in this relationship because this is not good.
No, it's clearly not optimal for 50% of this partnership.
Right.
Yeah. I was confused because what she said at the bar and then her coming home and being upset, I don't think we are understood what's going on.
No.
But Marion, a towel half draped over her nakedness, descends the stairs seductively, her skin shimmering from the shower, or possibly love sweat, they call it.
The insult of that.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, that left titty is a paid actor.
Oh, yeah.
No, it is wild. That's a wild thing to say. But even at the bar,
Yeah.
it's
It was like, hey,
I'm a paid
Well.
player today. I'm not an extra. I have a line. But still not looking at her, Tilda seethes that Marion makes her sick. Marion mutters that she drank too much and thinks she's going to throw up, but Tilda just tells her to do it somewhere else. Marion repeats that she's going to be sick, and Tilda shouts for her to call her pimp to look after her. Completely over it, Marion stands defiantly at the top of the stairs, revealing more of her body through her opened towel as she asks, "Do you want to know what really happened?" And she reveals that the man from the arcade bar was terrific, and crudely adds, "He made you look pathetic when we made love."
Get out. Or I'm
Yeah.
getting out.
Yeah.
That is, there are certain things maybe to me that you cannot walk back.
No.
Like, that is so mean. That would destroy me so deeply. This is done, I think. Like,
Yeah. Again, we don't know their relationship, but I don't think she has the kink where she likes being degraded and all that.
clearly
so
not, because
she's very upset.
she's not happy.
No.
But before Marion can go into further detail, Tilda grabs a glass pitcher and hurls it up the stairs at Marion. It misses her, but shatters loudly against the wall. Tilda storms into an adjacent office, pacing for a moment before she grabs a pair of scissors. She clutches the blades, whispering to herself, "One day." I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
She has
Holy
been
shit.
pushed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But her eyes pierce through the wall in the direction where Marion was standing on the stairs. But her apparent plans for a future murder are dashed.
She was just doing a little daydreaming.
Yeah.
She tosses the scissors and she hears movement outside of the window. She wrenches the curtain open, peering out into the night, and though she doesn't see anything out of the ordinary, the main theme begins to play very loudly as the camera rises from the first floor office to the blinds of an upstairs window. We pan across the side of the house and into another room where Marion stands, her towel draped around her body like a toga, as she heads into an adjoining bathroom. The camera shifts away from the window before rising to the roof, gliding across the shingles under the blue stillness of the night, before dipping down toward a window facing the staircase and traveling from the second floor to the first to a pair of wooden blinds, where a pair of black-gloved hands reach upward to break them open with a pair of bolt cutters. That was one unbroken take.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to witness.
Yeah.
It is, and the music's funky.
Oh, yeah. It punctuates it.
Oh, yeah.
So just as far as how they did it, and this is going to be kind of wild because this is the third film in a row in July. So far, we're 3 for 3. They used the Luma crane.
I knew you were going to say that.
The Luma crane, this is the first, it has the distinction of being the first Italian film to use one.
Okay.
And in an interview with Argento and Fangoria, he even cited the use of it in Friday the 13th Part 3.
Oh my God.
Okay.
But apparently the producers of the film begged for Argento to cut this sequence out of the film.
Is it because it's long?
Yeah. They said it was pointless and doesn't add anything to the sequence. But for me, as I'm watching it, I feel like it's kind of it isn't the movements of the killer, because we see the killer's on the ground floor, but it almost gives this presence of the killer that he could be anywhere.
It's that. I think it adds to the tension and suspense because you know that something's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of creates this, you don't know who it's going to happen to.
Mm-hmm.
And it also shows you how unsafe this house is.
This house is a death trap.
Yeah.
It's a lot of ways into this place.
Yes.
I did enjoy this. I'll be honest. It maybe shaved 10, 15 seconds off of it, but and I'll give my reason for that. I love the music. It's too funky for this. I need to be in a tense moment. They just had a fight. They whatever. Again, you turn the music on. I'm doing bumps. We're dancing. We're like, just turn it down a little bit. You know what I mean? Because it does give the feeling of the killer can be anywhere. And I do like how it goes. And hearing them say how much of a pain in the ass it is to use the thing, I bet this was, once they got it, it was like, we're done.
Yeah.
This sequence, I think it's like 2.5 minutes. It took them 3 days to shoot.
Oh my God.
I did also want to point out that Argento said that he drew influence from Michelangelo Antonioni's The Passenger. It's a film that starred Jack Nicholson,
Oh, okay.
but it was also shot, like this film, by Luciano Tovoli.
Okay.
All right.
And I just think that the fact that it took 3 days for 2.5 minutes, it's such a commitment to an idea.
Yeah.
It's just very, very cool. And on commentary, they said it might even be a reference to the opening shot of Psycho, where they peer in through that hotel window.
Okay.
So I'm just very intriguing. And again, I love it so much when filmmakers do things in such a way that is so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because you did not have to do this.
No.
No.
But it's like...
It does add.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
payoff is great.
Mm-hmm. But back inside, Tilda seethes, shouting for Marion to turn the music down. I was like,
I laughed out loud because obviously it is the score, but the fact that this woman just was standing on the stairs saying she's going to throw up, insulting her partner, runs back upstairs and then starts bumping some fire ass music. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
How did she get her hands on the Tenebrae soundtrack? It's very meta.
Yeah.
But the volume of the score dips slightly, and Tilda hears a voice whisper over her shoulder. Pervert. Filthy, slimy pervert. For some reason, Tilda chooses this moment to take her shirt off and to change into a more comfortable top that appears exactly like the one she just removed. So, all right. No matter.
That one was dirty from the bar.
All right.
It's like, I really like this shirt. But as she puts it on, the collar folds in on itself, making it difficult for her to pull it on properly. With her face covered, she reaches to correct it, but so does the killer's black-gloved hand from off-screen. As soon as they grab her, they seize her shoulder, and she lets out a fearful scream. The killer brandishes the straight razor, slicing a hole in the front of the shirt, revealing Tilda's frightful face, her eyes opened wide, but her view of the killer obstructed.
That was a really cool shot.
Yeah.
Love it. But the killer slices at her again, and blood splatters across Tilda's trembling lips. She groans in agony as her bloody hand reaches uselessly for help, knocking over a glass vase. We watch as it tumbles from a metal stand, shattering to pieces in a loud crash. Marion hears this upstairs, and she immediately stops drying her hair and shuts off the music completely. After taking a drink of alcohol from a nearby glass, Marion exits the room, dropping her towel to her waist as she rounds the corner slowly down the staircase. But she leans over the glass railing, calling out for Tilda. But we see the killer's razor blade make short work of a light bulb, the filament inside sizzling to a smoky death and dipping the room to darkness.
I loved that.
Yeah. There are so many tight shots of really, really cool things in this film.
Mm-hmm.
But Marion, now a silhouette against the white wall, steps into the light of the lower floor as she makes her way down the stairs. But through the glass divider, Marion discovers Tilda, face down and covered in blood, her eyes opened and frozen forever in terror. Marion screams, turning to run up the stairs as fast as she can, but she's stopped immediately by the killer, who slashes at her spine with the straight razor. Marion crumbles to her knees, and the murderer raises the blade once more, bringing it down to slice Marion's throat. Her body collapses lifelessly, her head crashing through the glass railing of the staircase, hanging precariously over the lower flight of stairs. The stabbing and the smashing through the glass reminded me a lot of the beginning of Suspiria.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, are you referencing yourself, Isaac?
Yeah.
Good for you.
But we glide from Marion's body back to Tilda's, where the killer stands over her, their black gloves fumbling with their camera until the flash goes off, illuminating Tilda's corpse on the floor of the office.
She didn't deserve that.
No.
I mean, really, even though that other lady was really mean, nobody deserves that. But I was surprised to see Tilda get it first.
Yeah.
Until I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, if this is a super fan, which it seems like from the letter and from, quoting the book and whatever else, I wonder if that "Are you still saying nice things about me" was facetious, and maybe she is very critical of his work, and whoever is doing this is like, not my Peter Neal, you know?
Yeah. I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
But because of their relationship, and seemingly he knows her family. He said, what, a decade or something? Peter Neal and Tilda.
Yeah.
Now these murders are directly tied to him.
Yes.
Now this is not just someone taking morbid inspiration from his work. Now this is someone that that has been murdered. So I feel like this is really escalating things in a really bad way for Peter Neal.
That's the other thing that I was wondering, if we're operating under the idea that this is like a super fan gone wrong.
Well, that's what
at this point.
Yeah.
Did he kill Elsa because Peter Neal won't get the residuals of the stolen book?
Were they mad because they're like, no, bitch, you need to pay. Papa needs a new shirt. His luggage was ruined.
It fits.
Yeah.
But
no, I did. I thought the same thing at first because especially Tilda being established as a character.
Yeah.
You'd think that in this scene we'd build up to her murder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the killer is more furious at that,
Yeah.
and just kind of has to kill Marion.
Yeah,
Right.
because she's there. And also because clearly she is a sexually liberated woman.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're talking about pervert and shit like that. Maybe this person doesn't like that. You know what I mean? And if I'm just going. If Tilda critiqued his work as being sexist and misogynistic, maybe somebody could be like, yeah, and I like that. You know what I mean? And they don't like women.
There's been 3 murders in this film, and it's been 3 women that have been killed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we get this very strange dream flashback sequence where someone could have formed some very bad ideas.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about the intention of the artist when they make something, and sometimes people take that and pervert it and take it a different way. And so I don't subscribe to Peter Neal being that way, but maybe whoever is reading this and doing this, it does interpret it that way and likes interpreting it that way.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, yeah. I didn't think about that, what you were talking about, her being so close with him.
Yeah.
Because that is true. And it is very close.
It brings it to his front door.
Yeah.
But we cut to the killer's perversely sadistic photo studio, the camera gliding over outtakes of Elsa's murder scene at a slanted workstation and rising to discover strips of film clipped to a wire and hanging next to fully developed photographs of the murder of Tilda and Marion. The camera pans over to a faucet spewing water into a dingy sink, and in a tight shot, we watch as the killer rinses the blood from the blade of the straight razor.
I do that sometimes when I might want to make another PB&J.
Like back into the peanut butter.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
You can't mix.
No, yeah, you got to clean it.
can't.
No, can't cross streams. But we cut to an office where Alboreto, a porter played by Fulvio Mingozzi, answers the telephone. Fulvio Mingozzi, he played a taxi driver in Suspiria.
Okay.
I think he was also in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Deep Red.
Okay.
That's awesome.
And I can't remember the length of the roles, but here it's very short. Suspiria, it's very short.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. But it's Peter on the telephone, and though we don't hear his end of the conversation, Alboreto assures him that there's a switch and he'll come up to show him. But Alboreto rushes off the phone when Maria, his daughter, played by Laura Wendell, boldly asks for 5,000 lira. This sounds like a lot, but I wonder the exchange rate.
Yeah.
I actually looked it up.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
And this is just Google, so don't quote me, but 5,000 today is about $153, but in 1982 it was like $4.99.
That's
So I was like,
Damn.
I will take 5,000 as well.
if you're just handing it out.
She's
Yeah.
just like, money, please. It's very casual.
But instead of the money, she's given a task. He wants her to go to Unit 22 to help the tenant turn on his hot water. He reminds her that the switch is either in the bathroom closet or under the kitchen sideboard. Maria just asks again for the 5,000 lira, which Alboreto gives her somewhat reluctantly. But Maria arrives at Unit 22, Peter answering the door for her. After she introduces herself, Peter jokes that her voice sounded much deeper on the phone. But after gaining permission to come inside, Peter follows Maria to the bathroom, where she searches for the switch but comes up empty.
I was like, damn, Peter, back up. He
Yeah.
is like right behind her.
He's like leaning against the door frame. I will say she exits. There's a lot of room to exit,
Yeah.
but she doesn't use any of that room. Because she presses herself directly against Peter as she sidesteps past him and back into the apartment proper. Peter rests his hand on his torso where Maria touched him. But Maria stops, asking him if he wrote the novel Out of Dawn. When Peter confirms that he did, Maria tells him it was terrific. Again, just this repeated thing of so many people read his novels.
Yeah.
And as well, his reaction is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But she heads into the kitchen where she finds the switch in a cabinet under the sink. She directs Peter's attention to it, and he leans down with her as she turns it on. Maria shares that there's a bookstore on the corner nearby, and in the window of the store, the shelves are lined only with Peter's books. Peter is pleasantly surprised, and as she heads towards the door, Maria suggests that he check it out, sharing that Carol, the assistant of the store, would love to say hello to him. Peter supposes that he will, and as he opens the door for Maria to leave, Anne has returned for the morning, just in time to see Peter bidding Maria farewell. After she leaves, Anne quips that Peter doesn't waste any time. But Peter retorts that Maria is jail bait and assures Anne that she was just here to fix the water heater.
First of all, gross.
Yeah, that term is
disgusting. Secondly, hate jealousy. I was like, okay, Anne.
Yeah.
To Peter's annoyance, Anne calls Maria his personal plumber. But Peter checks his watch, complaining that he'll have to wait a few hours before the water is hot. It's like, come on. You're in Rome. Go somewhere. But he asks if she knows how long he's already been awake. But Anne heads into the kitchen to prepare Peter's coffee for him, muttering to herself sarcastically, mocking Peter, "Oh, and my pillow's too hard." She answers this imaginary Peter, telling him that she'll get him a feathered pillow. But then Peter actually calls out, "And my pillow's too hard." To which Anne answers for real that she'll get him that feathered pillow.
What a brat.
So you know this man.
Yes.
But just outside Peter's door, we see the elevator slide open, the camera hovering above the head of the person who steps off of it, arcing around them to Peter's door, where a black-gloved hand slides an envelope marked Personal Peter Neal under the door. But we watch as Alboreto directs two elevator repairmen, one uncredited and the other played by Lamberto Bava.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
He guides them to a set of relays that need repairs just outside of Peter's door. So Lamberto Bava, obviously the son of Mario Bava.
Right.
But he was also the second unit director on this film.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
He worked with Argento a ton doing that kind of work.
Thank you, T.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought, I guess. But the killer hides in a nearby hallway, watching through a glass panel in the door, but he slowly creeps down the hall when the repairmen retreat to gather the necessary tools. Inside the apartment, Peter requests that Anne order a typewriter for him while he's here, only to learn that Anne has already done so. But as he paces in front of the door, Peter discovers the envelope that the killer slid under it. He scoops it up, asking how long it's been there, and Anne answers that it wasn't there just a moment ago. The music rises tensely as Peter bursts through the door, feverishly glancing around the hall before he takes off running outside in search of the killer, with Anne following close behind him. With no one in sight, Peter rips open the envelope, unfolding and reading the letter inside. Sic transit gloria lesbi, which he translates from Latin to, "So passes the glory of Lesbos." This confuses Anne, but Peter supposes that the killer likely had a higher education and studied Latin. Or maybe he's killed again.
I'm sorry, that's what you got out of that? You couldn't have looked that up in a book or the saying? Or...
It's a bit of a reach.
It is.
He's like, I'm a profiler now.
Yeah, and honestly, it means the killer's smart as fuck. It's like, dude, really?
What?
He's like, I'm Mindhunter. It's like,
No, you're not.
please go back inside.
You told the killer the police were there last night.
Yeah.
Like, really?
You're off the case.
But we cut immediately to a coroner, played by Giampolo Saccarola. He stands over a body on a table in his surgical gown. A tape recorder hangs from the ceiling, which he switches on and recounts. Lateral incision, 14 centimeters, from the carotid diagonal to the scapula. Subclavian also. He switches it off, moving over to the next table, where we see a woman's bruised and bare legs. As he surveys this body, Detective Germani walks in, greeting the coroner and remarking that it's always nice to see him, but he's liking this place less and less.
I will say this is the most casual autopsy room I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's really not a door here.
No.
You just kind of...
Just wandering.
But when he complains about the cold temperature, the coroner retorts that if it were any warmer, he'd be complaining about the smell instead.
Ugh.
But he shares with the detective that the same razor was used in these killings as was used in the opening examination of the girl killed 6 weeks ago, I was like 6 weeks ago.
God
Yeah.
damn. I don't even think I caught that.
I didn't realize Peter Neal has been here.
Yeah.
Damn.
But he also reveals that that can't even be true because we go to an interview with Bertie that was supposed to be Thursday.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Time is a flat circle.
Huh.
He's like, look, this has been going on.
Hey,
Before Peter Neal got here.
maybe Elsa wasn't the first. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe we just seen it the first.
Yeah.
But he also reveals that the second girl brought in this morning had intercourse less than an hour before she was killed. But when Germani states that doesn't mean that the killer was the lover, the coroner just chuckles, remarking that they often are. And again, setting up suspect after suspect.
Yeah.
And that is kind of strange. The night that she brings a stranger home, they both get murdered.
Yeah.
That's true.
But back in Peter's apartment, Anne and Gianni set up his newly delivered typewriter. As Peter looks over some notes on a pad, the telephone on his desk rings, which Anne promptly answers. She passes the phone to Peter, telling him that it's Germani. The camera presses in on Peter as he tears the glasses from his face, asking in disbelief, "Who's been killed?" A look of shock registers on his face as he gets his answer.
That's sad. Again,
Yeah.
they were friends.
Yeah.
I will say I don't feel as much grief and sadness over this death as I would like to.
By not as much, you mean none?
Yeah.
Because in the next scene, I thought he was meeting with police to try to help or something,
Yeah.
and he's literally not.
Yeah.
I can't point, I can't remember, and I will get to it in a minute, but exactly the dialogue that takes place between Peter and the detectives at the end of the next scene. But I feel like this scene honestly could have been moved earlier,
Yeah.
and it would have made a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll find out. I'm probably wrong. Because we then find Peter in the green room at Channel 1 television station with Bulmer. Bertie joins them, sitting down with Peter on a couch to go over his plans for their interview. He says that he wants to do about half an hour with Peter in the studio, but he wants to do something in depth. And he appears very giddy as he shares that the station only lets him do this about twice a year. When Peter calmly accepts the proposal, Bertie retrieves a copy of Tenebrae from his briefcase, launching into his first question, despite not even being in the studio yet. Bertie remarks that Tenebrae is clearly about human perversion and its effects on society, and he asks Peter how he sees the effects of deviant behavior on our lives.
Tell me you missed the point of my book without telling me you missed the point of my book.
Yeah. Peter denies this simplistic reading, claiming that that's not the entire point of the novel. But Bertie defends his interpretation, reminding Peter, 2 of the victims are deviants. But Peter stops Bertie in his tracks, asking, "Who says they're deviants?" He comments that one of the characters is gay, but so what? Adding that the character is portrayed as perfectly happy, but when he attempts to detail the character's romantic relationship in the novel, Bertie interrupts him, countering that the killer's motivation is to eliminate what he calls corruption. Peter stares at Bertie in muted repulsion as he reminds him, the killer is insane. There is such a small moment of acting here that becomes very important later, but it's the way he snaps back into a different tone when he elaborates.
Okay.
Just
All right.
remember this section.
Yeah.
But he does elaborate, explaining that the only aberrant behavior in the novel... But Bertie seizes on this term, asking through a giggle, what is aberrant behavior? He shares that he was brought up a strict Catholic, but he believes in abortion. He believes in divorce, which technically makes him aberrant from a strictly Catholic standpoint. Peter just replies, I see, and somewhat confused, states that he thought this was an afternoon show. He asks Bertie if he really wants the interview to tackle such heavy topics.
Peter said, keep it cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too much.
Bertie relents, but admits that he's simply just interested himself in Peter's thoughts. So this wasn't even about the interview.
Yeah.
Do you know what hotel I'm staying at?
Yeah.
I was going to say, look, dude, if you want to talk personally, we can do it out in the open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where there's tons of people around.
Tons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this weird new Rome.
Yeah. Or 10 or 20,
Yeah.
however many.
Whatever
can
is
show up.
happening here
Yeah.
or has happened here.
Yeah.
But Peter appreciates this, calling it a real compliment as Bertie smiles. But Bulmer looks on, clearly unsettled by the conversation that's just taken place. As you're watching this for the very first time, I will say somebody has jumped to the top of the suspect list.
Yes.
But corralled by an uncredited producer, Bertie leads Peter into the studio for their interview. A production assistant then wheels away a cart in front of Bulmer, but he snaps to his feet, seizing his hat from atop the equipment on the cart before it's taken away. Again,
He loves that
Yeah,
hat.
it's a really nice hat.
it's his lucky black cap. But on the set of Studio One, Bertie goes over the format of the interview with Peter as Bulmer watches from behind a glass window. As he stands there a little uneasily, detectives Germani and Altieri enter the room from behind him. When they approach Bulmer, Bulmer tells them that the interview is just starting, and he tells Germani that it'll take about 20 to 30 minutes, suggesting that they go outside the studio to talk. They step out together as the countdown to the broadcast taping reaches 1 minute. But heading downstairs, Bulmer explains to the detectives that Peter is very sensitive and an interview is a delicate process, asking them if there's anything he can do for them. As Altieri gushes over spotting Yves Montand inside the studio, Bulmer reminds them that Peter has one hell of a schedule, and he's even starting on a brand new book. This guy she spotted, I believe, is an Italian singer.
Okay.
Oh.
But Germani asks if Bulmer is any relation to Peter, and when Bulmer explains that he's his agent, Germani asks sarcastically if he gets 10% of his conversations with the police department as well.
Wow.
That was good.
That's real good. Bulmer chuckles, warning Germani that he has feelings, like a real human being. But Germani shares his theory. Somehow or another, Bulmer's client holds the key to it all. These killings are like a tribute to Peter Neal. And he asks, what do you do with 10% of a tribute like that, Mr. Bulmer?
But it wasn't asked for.
No?
Like, I mean, I feel like the accusatory route is not the way to go.
No.
Right.
And Bulmer's like, I get 15%.
Yeah. First of all.
And I guess I just feel like Peter's attitude during and before the interview,
Right.
it doesn't match with just hearing about Tilda.
No, not at all.
But all of this stuff is necessary for Tilda to already have been killed to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
But outside the studio after the interview, Peter stands with Germani at his car. The detective explains that he's read all of the mystery novels, Agatha Christie, Rex Stout, Ed McBain, and he's a detective. Peter asks, and you'd never guess who the murderer is? And Germani confirms this. He never would. But as Anne and Gianni approach the car, Germani tells Peter that if he has any bright ideas, he needs to let him know. He reminds Peter that he may write about these things, but he turns over the real dead bodies. It's like, what kind of de-measuring content?
Yeah, I know.
We know that you're the detective. But they bid the detective farewell in Italian as they get into the car, Peter seeking reassurance from Anne that the interview went well as they drive away. Now this I totally understand.
Yeah.
I need constant reassurance. But Germani watches the car speed off down the road as Altieri rejoins him, boasting that she got Yves Montand's autograph. He jokes, "So what?" before giving her a smile and a playful pat on the arm. But back in Peter's apartment, Peter stands with Anne, pondering over his cup of tea. Could it be someone I know? Anne faces away from Peter, looking around a bit nervously, until he confesses that he wishes that he never wrote Tenebrae. Anne kindly caresses Peter from behind, telling him that he doesn't really mean that. But the doorbell rings suddenly, and Gianni answers it, looking quite jovial to find that it's Maria standing there, holding a typewriter. She says that Bulmer left it for Peter, but as she brings it inside, she laughs when she sees the typewriter that Anne already procured for Peter.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
I will say, though, his team is on it.
Oh,
They
yeah.
are.
They are taking care of him.
But before she leaves, Gianni stops her, telling her that he'll go down with her. She asks playfully, "Is that a proposal?" And Gianni isn't averse to this suggestion, telling his bosses that if they need him, he'll be at home. He exits with a whooping noise right behind Maria. But Peter gazes absent-mindedly out of the window, but is startled when he recognizes a motorist behind the wheel of a car speeding down the street. A driver who looks suspiciously like Jane. Anne responds in surprise, and Peter swears that it was Jane behind the wheel. Anne immediately scoops up the telephone, Peter asking what the prefix to New York is. Anne expresses her doubts, reminding Peter that Jane would never stray 10 miles from her shrink and that she's definitely still in New York. But when she passes the phone over to Peter, they get Jane's answering machine. But before he can leave a message, Peter hangs up the phone, and after locking eyes for a moment with Anne, he reiterates, "It was Jane."
What do you feel in that moment?
I would feel, hello, detective, the murderer is Jane McCarroll.
You.
That's what I would feel.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll hold.
Well, your bag, all this stuff is happening.
Mm-hmm.
You see this person that you know, and you're almost positive that's them. And it sounded like things were in a very good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just like, well, I'll be damned.
Yeah. Think you have dinner with me?
And I mean, honestly, the way that it appears at the airport in New York,
Yeah.
it appears that obviously, as you said, things are not good, but Jane is also kind of vindictive and jealous, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe if Tilda visited him in New York, or they met in New York when he was dating Jane, she knows Tilda.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that she wasn't there in Rome for Elsa's murder, but maybe we're starting to connect some dots.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and he doesn't know that she wasn't there.
True.
So I would be like, yeah, book him, Dano, or whatever.
I don't. I only know that from Reno 911. I don't know the real show that's from or anything. But Anne says that if Jane was here, she would have called Peter, even if it was just to scream at him, adding that Jane wouldn't even be here if she wasn't trying to get him back or apologize or something. Peter asks what Jane would have to apologize for, and Anne tells him for what she did to his... But when she doesn't finish her sentence, Peter guesses it. His travel bag. She thinks Jane did that?
Peter. Yes.
Yeah.
Anne excuses herself without answering Peter as he asks her again if she thinks Jane was responsible. Yes. One thing I will say, and one thing that we will come to learn, I feel like Anne knows more than just what she thinks about that bag. Because what we learn about what Jane is doing in Rome, who she is doing it with is not very discreet.
No.
Yeah, that's true.
But then again, it also raises the question, it's like, well, why wouldn't she tell Peter?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
She's like, we got a good thing going.
But stepping outside of the building, Anne waves goodbye to Maria and the unknown driver of a motorcycle played by Michaela Soavi, who speeds away with her down the road. Michaela Soavi, he's the man in the mask on Demons.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And he was also the second unit director under Lamberto Bava on this film.
That's awesome.
Damn, okay.
But when Anne continues onward to the parking garage, a loud clattering noise startles the hell out of her. But she realizes that it was just one of the maintenance workers throwing away an empty can of paint. As she gets into her car, the worker openly laughs at her as she drives out onto the street.
I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because I was already very worried for her we just saw Jane drive by.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'll go out there alone. It's like, oh, okay. So yeah, this dude, I'm like, dude, stop. It's enough.
But she stops in front of the payphone across the street from the building, looking up in the window at Peter, who stands there pensively before she drives away. But elsewhere, we see the killer's black gloves leafing through documents. It's a list of attributes, identifiers, and schedules, all a result of surveillance. They lift up the first page of documents to reveal photographs of a sex worker, played by Ippolita Santorelli. The killer's black gloves caress her pictures, but then they exit the building that they're in, shutting off the light and climbing a staircase to open a door, revealing a beautiful Italian mansion. They cross past a beautiful pond, its trickling water the only sound in the silent evening. The killer then closes the door behind them, locking it, but leaving the key before continuing down a stone walkway.
I loved the shot of the key.
Yes.
Mhm.
Thought it was really cool.
It is. That's a bold move.
Yeah.
Just, all right.
Let's go.
Yeah.
But we see the killer park their car across the street from the woman in the photographs, who paces along a sidewalk with other women as cars pass by or park to pick them up. The killer emerges from the vehicle, reaching into the pocket of their coat, only to realize that they left their key swinging in the lock of the door. We see the key in cutaway shots, and then we also see the killer kind of doing the Arthur fist.
Yeah.
That was mine.
Very upset.
Not the Arthur fist. It did remind me, though, of when Bart left his homework under his pillow or his
Yes.
permission slip.
Yes.
Because it's like, fuck, I know exactly where it is.
But elsewhere, we find Maria sitting with her date on the back of his motorcycle. She shouts furiously at him, telling him that she doesn't give a damn and asking him if he understands as she climbs off the back of the bike. She screams, asking him why he won't say anything to her. And he just takes off down the street without a word,
Yeah. What the hell?
deserting her.
Yeah.
He did not give a fuck.
No.
I don't know what they were arguing about, but he did not give a fuck about it.
Nope.
Maria screams for him to go fuck himself, calling him a bastard and spitting onto the pavement. But she continues alone through the dark, down a deserted street. But suddenly, a Doberman lurches up from behind a fence, barking at Maria and startling the shit out of her. It barks incessantly as Maria grabs a stick and bats at the fence to get it to stop or to go away.
Why?
I don't
Yeah.
know. This only agitates the animal, who continues barking and attempts to scale the fence. Not taking any chances, Maria just continues down the street, but when she stops to look back at the dog, she sees that it has hopped the fence and it's running right for her.
That dog had a bad day, and that was it.
That's the last straw.
That
was
was
the
it.
straw.
Like, oh no.
I was like, that dog's been practicing
Yeah.
getting over that fucking fence. He was just waiting.
But Maria takes off running with the dog in hot pursuit. She rounds the corner, jumping over a nearby fence herself, but the dog makes short work of it too, chasing her through trees before catching up with her and taking her to the ground. The dog snarls at Maria, attacking her as she attempts to defend herself.
I was like, what? What am I watching?
Yeah.
How many run-ins has she had with this dog in the past? I feel it's very personal.
Like
Yeah.
on-site beef.
I also was wondering if this was a reference to Suspiria.
That's exactly what it reminded me of. But god damn, this dog, he's a pole vaulter.
Yeah.
He's had a really bad day.
What is that, like, best in show, I think? Well, honestly, worse than show. He can't go biting people
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, no, you can't do that. But don't antagonize dogs that are already mad.
That's true.
Yeah, that was the big thing for me. I was like, you did not have to fuck with that dog like that.
But the music grows tense as Maria sustains several bites to her arms and legs, but she eventually bats the dog away for long enough to reach her feet again. But the dog has a taste for meat now, and he jumps for her again, only for her to bat him away with a nearby stick. She makes a break for it, climbing over a fence and continuing through the trees until she stumbles upon a stone walkway. The dog seems to weigh his options for a moment before deciding to hop the fence and continue to chase after her. He's like, I'm not letting this go.
Yeah. He did.
He thought about it.
He backed up and waited. He counted one Mississippi and he was like, no, fuck
I'm
that.
not
No.
doing
Yeah.
this. I think you're right. This was the last straw.
Because he does. He's like, oh, no, fuck that.
What if this is where her boyfriend always drops her off and he's like, I'm going to fuck with that dog? Again and again and again. He's like, I've been training. I'm going to count.
I've had it.
But Maria walks past a very familiar pond in front of a lavish Italian mansion. She cries out, asking if anyone is home, as the music in the score reaches a frenzy before ceasing entirely. This is never a good sign.
No.
The short-lived silence is broken as the dog lurches up out of nowhere, attacking Maria again and dragging her to the ground. It's not funny, but it's like it made me think of The Simpsons where Homer got his hand stuck in the toaster. Just Dad, it's in there again.
That dog fucking hates her.
Yeah, that and I. Like you said, T, it's not funny,
Right.
But he's just fucking coming out of nowhere.
It's crazy.
I feel like we needed a reason to bring her inside the house.
Yes.
Being attacked by a dog that fucking hates you
Several times.
was just such a wild reason to give.
I just the writing process for Argento is like, we got to get her from A to B. I don't know.
Maybe there's a mean dog or
Right, dog.
Done.
Yeah.
dog good with everybody.
But Maria is dragged to the ground in front of a very familiar blue door, a key dangling from the lock. She reaches for it and, seeing it as her only escape, turns the key and wrenches the door open, narrowly saving herself from the attack as she slams the door behind her. Maria stumbles in the dark, creeping down a few steps before reaching up and switching on the overhead light. She makes her way down the stairs, calling out for help, but when no one answers her, she continues onward, past a slanted workstation filled with paperwork and photographs. She walks over towards strips of hanging film and photography equipment. The dog, who is very persistent, you got to give it to the dog, jumps down from a wall outside, barking at Maria through the window and startling her.
He said, bitch, I didn't forget, bitch.
Yeah.
I saw you go.
She knocks over some paperwork in her fright, and when she picks them up, she discovers that they're newspapers, and at the top is a headline reading, 2 women mutilated, the mad slasher, 2 more victims. Her discovery is punctuated by the pulsing score as the dog, who finally decides that enough is enough, jumps back over the wall and disappears. But Maria shudders in fear as she picks up a photograph from the table, and in the photograph, Elsa lies framed at the center of it, dead on the floor, her throat slashed and pouring blood onto the marble.
So at this point, do you hide inside this house or do you take your chances with the mystery dog?
Ooh.
Because this is not good.
I think dog.
I think dog too. I'm more afraid of a man coming back here than the dog outside. And I am afraid of dogs.
Yeah, and we've already seen what the dog can do. We've
Yeah.
lived it.
And I fought him off.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, now that we're inside, we can probably find something to fight the dog off. And
Or
just-
find like a chain of hot links and
Yeah.
or that.
Just throw it strategically.
Yeah.
or eat it to give you the energy.
Yes. That's even better. But in another photo, Marion lies dead on the staircase, her head hanging through the crashed glass railing. Maria pushes through the photographs to find a container of several cut-out letters of different origins, the killer's wicked word bank for the letters being sent to Peter Neal. Maria gathers as much evidence as she can, folding the photographs and the killer's surveillance documents and stuffing them in the pockets of her skirt.
Very smart to take the evidence with you. And it did make me giggle a little bit at the pre-cut letters because it's going to save the killer a lot of time later.
Yeah. Just one afternoon, he's like, I'll just cut up every magazine I have.
Yeah.
You should have a little cubby for ease, one for you know what I mean.
But I agree. It's very smart. But hurry, you're like trying to take the whole table, dude. You've got to get the fuck out of here.
Well, and she's looking through. I'm like, that one.
But she creeps toward the staircase, but stops startled when she hears the dog barking outside again. Instead of leaving the way she came in, Maria finds another door at the end of a hall, which leads up another flight of stairs. As she climbs it, the music in the score grows menacing, the struck chords of electric guitars joining the pensive synth. But when Maria reaches the top of the staircase, she finds herself in a sprawling living room of a mansion, the walls lined with framed paintings and the furniture neatly arranged. This shot of this mansion, it is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
This is a real mansion.
Damn.
It's nice.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think I read that it was a friend of Argento's that was an architect.
Okay.
And he let them film there.
An architect living there makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Because even the outside is badass.
Yes.
But as the music reaches a crescendo, Maria locates the telephone and reaches for it, dialing the police. But at a distance, across the room, a shadowy figure steps into frame, watching Maria at the phone in front of a wall of windows. But Maria turns around, calling out to the figure and pleading with them for help, explaining that she was just attacked by a dog and came inside when she saw that the door was open. Half of that is true. But the figure unveils the blade of a straight razor, whispering in a hiss, "Spy. Damn little spy." As the killer approaches Maria in a POV shot, she drops the phone and takes off running, sliding open the glass patio door and slamming it right behind her, right on the killer's hand. You think that was a bit of foreshadowing with the guy with Elsa earlier with his hand in the gate?
Oh, maybe. I didn't even catch that.
I did catch that, but for a different reason. I was wondering if Mike Flanagan had anything to do with this. A
lot of hand.
Yeah.
He was deeply inspired. But the killer drops the straight razor into the pond, but quickly retrieves an axe from next to the fireplace. The music pulses as from the killer's point of view, we continue our pursuit of Maria through the backyard of the villa. Maria takes a standard horror movie fall in her attempt to escape.
Yes.
But she reaches her feet again, tossing the evidence she collected at the killer and begging them to leave her alone. Why?
I don't know. Yeah. This is the wrong thing to do for several reasons.
Yeah.
She tries to climb the backyard fence, but a plank comes loose and she tumbles to the ground, the killer catching up with her. Again, a plank coming loose, a plank was missing, and that's how the guy got to Elsa. I mean, it's just odd.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the killer raises the axe, bringing it down repeatedly into Maria's belly as she screams.
She fought the good fight. When she was coming up to that fence, I was like, I'm not about to be climbing too many more fences. You can just have me. I don't have it in me.
I did like this.
Yeah.
Her running away. It reminded me of kind of the way some stuff plays out in the very first Evil Dead.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, man, I like this. It's cheesy. Like you said, it's a movie fall, a movie run. But it's just, it is done in the way to where I was like, I feel this feels very familiar.
Yeah.
And I did appreciate it and I did enjoy this.
There was one thing that I saw, and I even said this back on Blood and Black Lace, where I said that it's so clear that the American slasher took from the Italian giallo.
Yeah.
If you look at the years and the way that everything was done.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of critics who said that a lot of Tenebrae takes from, of course, the Italian giallo, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it also seemingly borrows from the American slasher.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's like you give a little, you get a little.
Yeah. But the next morning, an uncredited landscaper mows an overgrown lawn, the camera following the lawnmower as it rolls over crumpled photographs taken by the murderer. But the landscaper stops his work when the mower reaches the bare foot of Maria, her dead body hidden in the tall grass.
Okay, sinister.
Yes, that's all I was thinking. Yeah, it's the same angle and everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we then find Peter sat on the edge of Bulmer's desk in his office, staring out of an adjacent window. Germani sits on the other end, opening another letter from the killer and unfolding it to read. I grieve for this child. Her death was the only way I could be free to go on. I will eliminate those who disgust me, the human perverts, soon now, the corrupter himself. Peter takes that to mean him.
Well, of course he does.
Yeah.
Germani concurs, suggesting that he be careful, adding that the killer is also very well informed, having known that Peter was due to arrive in Rome, and that Peter has an agent where he can send his letters, knowing now that it could be dangerous coming around to Peter's apartment, because Maria was also living in the building.
I was a little distracted for a moment because the detective's lashes are luscious. But I'm like, Peter, he really does not seem affected. Like, he doesn't seem...
No?
Yeah.
You were just like transfixed by that girl, what, a day or two ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's dead, murdered by somebody who's clearly using your work as inspiration.
Yeah.
And he's just like, damn. Like, I mean, he's
Yeah.
so like... and we talked about it with
Tilda.
Well, why are you so unaffected? It is weird.
He's like, you mean the girl that came and fixed my water heater?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, dude, that's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
So like,
You like my book, he said, Germani? And another thing I did want to say is that it took later when we returned to Bulmer's office for me to realize this was Bulmer's office. So it's like Bulmer was like, yeah, I found a letter you guys deal with. You guys have that. I'm very busy with other things, and we'll learn what he's busy with.
yeah, we will.
Yeah.
But Peter stands up to leave, asking Germani if he needs anything else from him. Germani admits that he doesn't, but he asks for Peter to stay in his apartment as much as possible, since this most recent letter threatened him personally. Germani then changes the subject, though, because he just finished reading Tenebrae. He says that he guessed the killer on page 30, and he's amazed as it's never happened before. But he offers to take Peter home.
Gee, thanks.
Yeah. I understand that you're a detective and this is probably old hat for you, but that shift in conversation
Yeah.
But anyway,
it gave me whiplash, I think. I was like, oh my God.
I did find it interesting because didn't he say earlier that he's never would be able to figure it out?
Yes.
So
And-
him saying that, I was like, but is there something you want to tell us?
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that it comes into play in a conversation that Peter has with him a little bit later.
Yeah.
But as you're watching this, you kind of get this feeling of Germani as far as like not only him as a detective, but his deductive reasoning. And isn't that what Sherlock Holmes is known for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know.
No,
There's
for sure.
These
Yeah.
nods all over the place. But in Peter's apartment, Peter works with Anne and Gianni, attempting to come up with possible suspects, but Anne calls the whole thing crazy. Peter continues hypothesizing, however, remembering the killer's words, saying that he accused Peter of trying to corrupt him. Anne adds, or she accused you. And Peter agrees. But after remembering the phrase, trying to eliminate the human perverts, Peter snaps into action, recalling the words of Cristiano Berti when he called Tenebrae a novel about aberrant behavior and human perversion. He admits Berti was very weird about it.
And he was.
Yeah.
After consulting a phone book and a large unfolded map, Peter realizes that Berti lives only 3 blocks from his apartment. Anne calls it paranoia, but Peter adds that Maria's body was found near there too. He repeats Berti's words before their interview. Tenebrae is a novel about human perversion and its effects on society. And then the words from the letter, trying to eliminate the human perverts. Anne hardly thinks a similar phrasing of words is enough to incriminate Cristiano Berti, but Gianni suggests Peter should tell Germani about it. Peter refuses. Assuming Germani wouldn't take his theory seriously and even imagines a mock headline, Peter Neal plays the fool to Razor Killer.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. So if you do go and say, hey, look, I have an idea. This is what I think's going on.
Yeah.
You think the police are going to be like, go tell the press this fucking dude was wrong.
Yeah.
What?
It is the most self-centered. My note was, I think this guy might be annoying and maybe a narcissist. That's wild. Tell him.
Yeah.
And tell him about Jane. Why is nobody talking about Jane?
That.
And can we talk for a moment about the fact that Germani literally said, bring everything to me?
Yeah.
Yep.
He's like, oh, I don't want to be wrong though. It's like when you know the answer in class, but you're too shy to say it, and then you were right, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah. Now they're getting all the credit.
Yeah, but like way more.
Yeah, I would say.
Higher stakes.
But Peter changes his tune as he asks, but if Peter Neal got it right, wouldn't that be something?
The third person, first and last name. Is it really? That's all. That's all I needed.
Yeah.
Like I can't with this dude.
You're right about the narcissist thing.
Yes.
Anne's eyes suddenly appear a bit shifty, and she doesn't respond at all to Peter's question. That's suspicious.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I thought the same thing. And Gianni's very happy in this scene. So it was a little distracting.
That's true. I mean, maybe he's glad to be a part of it. I don't know.
No,
He's
yeah.
glad to be on the team.
He is.
And these two Smiley.
Yeah, I was like, damn, what is he looking at over there? But yeah, the way she looks, I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Him saying that, I was like, what are you going to do? Or what do you know? Or what happened?
Interesting, because I took it as she was feeling how I was feeling, which is like, are you fucking for real, dude?
Oh, more
Oh,
of
okay.
like her
Yeah.
judging him.
Yes, because
Okay,
I was
okay.
judging him.
Well, yeah.
I think this movie has wired you to suspect everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so any moment of any weirdness, you're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
What was that?
But that night, Peter rides passenger in Gianni's car, and they watch through their windows as police prowl the area, pulling over motorists at checkpoints and treating everyone as a potential suspect. Gianni is surprised by the police presence, but Peter checks his watch, telling him that they should be quitting soon. In Peter's apartment, Anne watches the evening news, where an uncredited reporter stands at Maria's crime scene, recounting the events and the mystery surrounding her death, as well as the recent series of murders. He shares that a letter was sent to the police, proclaiming that the killer's next victim will be someone referred to as the Great Corruptor, and he jokes that this message is expected to result in several businessmen and politicians leaving the city.
A woman is dead.
Yes!
Yeah.
You're at her
You're at the crime scene.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe
Yeah,
now's
don't
not the
say that. Yeah, don't.
You're tight five. Like, come on, dude. Anne shuts off the television in frustration.
Yeah.
But Anne heads outside and through the gate, unlocking her car and tossing her materials inside. But before she can get in herself, she spies someone standing across the street next to a vehicle. It's Jane. As soon as Anne realizes this, Jane hops into her car and speeds away, staring directly at Anne through the window.
What the fuck?
I was like, Jane's bold.
Yeah.
Anne rushes back inside through the gate and back into Peter's apartment, attempting to call Jane on the telephone back in New York. But of course, when she only gets her answering machine again, she leaves the apartment, shutting off the light and closing the door. I don't know why she expected... She's like, Jane, someone looks just like you and Ron.
Oh, thank God you're in New York.
But again, why not say something?
Yeah.
Because if we all know we're on the same page, we're sharing with Germani, then why not? You know what I mean? That way she can be like, hey, look, Jane was outside. I ran into her. I know it was her. Okay, cool. Now we have more eyewitnesses.
And the other thing is that Germani already Germani is in possession of Peter's bag that was sabotaged.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like you already are aware of this crime.
Yeah.
I was also nervous because while she's making this call, she left the door wide ass open.
Oh.
She did.
I was like, Anne.
You know, honestly, and with Peter and Gianni gone, if the killer was trying to do whatever, this would kind of be the perfect time.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
She's alone.
Yeah. And in his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But after she leaves, the camera lingers on the door for a moment before panning through the darkness, an ominous organ accompanying its trek, reaching a crescendo as the camera settles on a bright light reflected in a sharp and shimmering piece of glass. I have to be honest, I was like, I don't know what that is.
No, I have no idea. My note was, oh shit, that's probably foreshadowing.
See, and that does make more sense as to say just like giving you this bad feeling
Yeah, yeah.
of
Well, it was-
something to come.
Yes.
I kind of thought that it was more of a representation of the razor.
Okay,
And I was like, oh, okay, so bad shit's going to start happening.
Yeah.
that works. Because whenever it does it and the way the music reaches the crescendo, you would expect that to be if it, like, you see the razor.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Well, her leaving the door open, I was like, I thought, because it was so
Oh.
dramatic
Yeah.
that they were going to be in there. Or,
Okay.
you know what I mean? But I was just like, oh, something sharp.
Yeah.
But back with Peter and Gianni, they hop a fence into the backyard of a sprawling villa. Gianni doesn't seem to be taking it seriously, joking that he hasn't been in a backyard since he was 6, whatever that means.
Really? Really?
It's a backyard.
He's also having entirely too much fun.
Yeah, he is.
I guess he still has the giggles from earlier. What?
Peter's like, Gianni, pipe
It's
down.
like, do you know what we're doing?
Yeah.
It's stealth, man.
You haven't shut up since we got out of here. But as they peer through the trees, we cut to inside the house, where a pair of black-gloved hands destroy evidence. smashing a straight razor to bits and tossing photographs and incriminating documents into a raging fire in the hearth. Outside, however, Gianni complains that he's bored. You've been here for a minute and a half.
It's a stakeout.
Yeah.
You were just excited to be in a backyard, I thought.
Yeah, no shit.
But Peter admits that all detection is boring, adding that if you cut out the boring bits and leave the rest, you've got yourself a bestseller.
Peter Neal.
All right.
But when they notice a light turning on inside the house, the men are startled and dip down lower behind the trees. This shift in attitude made me laugh very hard.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah, that's why.
They watch a shadow travel around inside the house and follow it into the living room, where they see Berti standing by the window, a stack of papers in his arm. Gianni formulates a plan, telling Peter that he'll go around back while Peter keeps watch. They both watch as Berti takes a seat, flipping through the pages resting on his lap. But when Gianni calls out to Peter, his calls go unanswered except for a shushing noise. But suddenly, the lights go out in Berti's mansion as the music grows tense around him. Berti notices that he's not alone in the room anymore, calling out to the intruder. And in a POV shot, we approach Berti, who responds in stunned shock as a voice whispers, "Yes, it was me. I killed them." An axe is raised above Berti's head before being brought down into his skull as he shrieks. Gianni watches in terror as Berti removes the axe from his head before collapsing to the floor, blood pouring from his fresh wound as he stares lifelessly through the glass. Gianni stands frozen in shock until a thrown object smashes through the glass that once separated him from the killer. Gianni stumbles away fearfully as the camera pulls back from Berti's dead body. I did want to point out, I saw in an interview with Daria Nicolodi, if I'm not mistaken, she was in a movie with John Steiner that was directed by Mario Bava. And I don't want to give away the title of the movie, but I've given away enough as it is. But apparently, this exact thing happens to him in that movie.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
And so it was kind of, I don't know if it was intentionally an homage or just the terrible thing that keeps happening to John Steiner. But I was very shocked at the brutality of this death.
Yeah.
The look of the way that the blood spurts from his head, the way that it strikes him and he wrenches it out of his own head. That was wild.
No, it's great. I have a lot of thoughts and even more in a moment, but Gianni just watching this happen was kind of hilarious to me. Honestly reminds me when me and T were little, we would pretend that we were detectives and we would be on a stakeout and we would hide in a closet and peek out and be like, oh no, like they're getting killed right now. Like, and we'd be taking notes on the murder instead of stopping the murder.
Well, we don't know how to be detectives yet. And we're not trying to get killed. We're trying to solve it.
Yeah, you're spy kids. You can't go out there. The grown-ups are going to fuck you up.
Yeah. But
it's like, I'm dad.
Can you do something? One thing I will say, though, is we were pretty courageous to even take a peek.
Yeah.
Oh, no. He's still brutally murdering them.
I didn't realize until I got older how fucking funny that was. But that was this to me. It just kind of made me laugh because it's not stop or no, nothing. He's just like, oh, fuck. Like, oh yeah, he's getting asked a question.
But what is he really though? What is he supposed to do, or what can he do?
I mean, nothing without also putting yourself at risk.
Right.
I will give him that.
Don't be a hero.
It
Yeah.
just it really made me flash back like almost 30 years, and it did make me laugh.
And something else is, you're right, he is literally not really hiding behind anything.
No, he's just standing there
out in the open.
And I'm like, I feel like in most movies they would throw something or they'd scream or they would. He's just like, oh, fuck, like he's really getting it, you know?
It isn't until the glass shatters. It's like the killer's like, you should be running.
Yeah.
Hello, Earth to Gianni.
But retracing his steps through the backyard, Gianni finds Peter unconscious on the ground, his head resting bloody on a rock. He wakes Peter, who clutches a wound at the back of his head as Gianni lifts him to his feet, asking him what happened. Peter says that he doesn't know and mutters that someone must have hit him. But Gianni guides him back to the fence, fearful that the killer must still be in the house. The camera pans back through the trees, but before we reach the house again, we return to Gianni's car, where Peter interrogates Gianni about what he saw, asking about the attributes of the killer, but Gianni doesn't remember a thing, claiming he didn't see anything except for the killer's axe.
I'm just thinking, I hope they're driving to a nearby place with a phone that they can use, because they just witnessed a fucking brutal murder.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly they're running to go tell.
Yeah.
One would think.
Yeah.
And I will point out, very interesting line of questioning from one Peter Neal.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Gianni says that Cristiano Berti knew the killer, and he repeats the killer's words, that it was him, and that he killed them all. And then he murdered Berti. Gianni crumbles, recalling all the blood. But back at his apartment, Peter cleans the wound on the back of his head in the bathroom sink as Gianni wipes his own face with a towel. Anne stands next to them, urging Gianni to go to the police with what he saw, claiming that it could break the case. Gianni, for some reason, tells her that he didn't see shit.
You saw enough.
Yeah.
You saw enough.
He says, I just saw a dead man with his head split open.
That's enough.
That's enough.
Yeah. And you did see more than that.
You
Yes!
did. You heard more?
Yes.
He's like, no, I can't provide a clear description. So, and with Peter cleaning the wound on his head, it did confuse me at this point, because if he's the great corruptor, as he assumed, why did he only get knocked out?
Interesting.
This has not happened to anyone else.
Well, someone must have hit him in the head with a rock.
Right. Why?
Yeah.
But why? Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter raises his head from the sink, asking them both if they know what he saw, and he shares that he saw his mother putting him on a school bus in Rhode Island. He says that after that knock on the head, it was like a movie. Peter then looks at his own reflection, his shirt opened and revealing a crucifix necklace. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But Anne suggests that Peter see a doctor, but Peter declines, belittling his symptoms to wooziness and being a bit dumb. Anne suggests that they should just head back to New York for a little while, but Peter instead says that Anne should stay here for the night and offers to make up the bed. Anne tells him to take it easy and offers to do it herself, telling him that of course she'll stay. Gianni, however, is not invited to stay the night, and we find him driving home alone in tears, reliving the trauma of having just witnessed a brutal murder 45 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that was intentionally funny, but I laughed out loud at, no, you stay. Of course I will. Johnny's like crying alone in his car. He's the only one that witnessed a murder.
Yes.
He was the one that was there with you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it really, really tickled me.
Literally wiping tears.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
He's traumatized.
It's
Yeah.
so cruel. So cruel. But back at the apartment, Peter sits at his table, looking over paperwork, as Anne climbs into her makeshift bed on the couch. I feel like he should have given her the bed.
Yeah.
But Anne jokes that after 6 years, this is somehow the first time that they've ever spent the night together. Peter comments that 4 of those 6 years, they would have had Jane around to disapprove. Anne chuckles, but changes the subject, asking Peter how his head feels, and Peter repeats the question, calling it a very interesting one, as he saunters his way over to the armrest on the couch, asking her, what head?
Peter Neal.
Yeah.
I wrote which head. Do you want to find out? And then he said it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
But the two suddenly get closer to each other, the 6 years of apparent pining for each other, melting away as they share an intimate kiss.
To be very clear, I've been picking up on these vibes from since the airport.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't think that this is the first time that Anne has put the ass in assistant, but I'm happy for them. Priorities, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of how this little scene here, him making that joke and whatever, I was like, this doesn't feel like this is the first time you guys have done this.
Not to me. It
Yeah.
didn't.
I believed that this was the first time until what she says next.
Yeah.
Okay.
because Anne pragmatically portends that in the morning they'll forget about this, telling him that nothing's happened, which he repeats before sealing their promise with a kiss. It's like the Men in Black thing. We're wiping every time.
Yeah. It's like, don't tell anybody about that thing I told you. What thing? Ah? Yeah.
The secret.
No,
Oh,
you're good.
Oh, man.
And you should wipe every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
This has come up too much on Pod Mortem recently, but
It has.
But we cut to a tight shot of an opened eye, the pupil contracting under the brightness of a beaming red light.
Red light.
Mm?
Technically making Tenebrae, 1982.
Yes.
A strikingly colorful film.
Oh.
God damn it, Reneé.
What?
You got a full name.
I was shaking in my boots a little.
But from the red light, we dip to white with a metallic screech, which gives way to the eerie, dreamlike tune that we heard once before. We see red high heels walking across a brick walkway, peering up to find the woman wearing them. It's the woman from the beach from the previous sequence we saw. She walks with a man in a blue suit jacket, once again played by Michaela Soavi. But they're seemingly attending some kind of garden party. We watch them in POV from behind the leaves of nearby shrubbery. When the man takes off in the other direction after bidding the girl goodbye, she moves her red shoes over fallen petals of pink flowers. We suddenly emerge from the greenery, and the woman seems to recognize us. She offers us a small smile, but we approach her with a knife in our hand, stabbing her twice under the ribs. We return to the tight shot of the opened eye, the pupil now dilating to blackness under a harsh red light before dipping to darkness.
My only thought here was I am hoping dearly that we find out what the fuck this is.
Right.
Yeah.
This whole sequence of events and murder.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What is happening?
The next morning in the apartment, Anne wakes up alone on the couch. She calls out for Peter, but receives no response from him.
Was the fact that she was still made to sleep on the couch fucking bonkers to anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, dude.
I feel like if you're spending the night with someone, like spending the night with them, we can at least sleep in the same bed.
He's like, I'm going
Yeah.
to go to the bed. Or
Yeah.
no, you get out and go to the couch. Which one was it?
Well, unless they made it sweet on the couch and they just slept on the couch together.
He was, I don't think so.
He's like, this pillow's too
I was
hard.
going to say, Peter Neal's not sleeping on the couch.
But we find Peter arriving at Bulmer's office, declining the offer of a cup of coffee from Bulmer's secretary, played by Isabella Amadeo. Bulmer is busy closing a deal on the telephone as he sits behind his desk, but he gets off the phone when he sees Peter enter the room and take a seat in front of him. Bulmer expresses how broken up he was to hear about Bertie's death, but Peter shares that he only came here to tell Bulmer that he's thinking of leaving Rome for a couple of weeks, maybe to spend some time in Paris or somewhere else.
He's roaming the fuck out of here.
Very good.
Huh?
But Bulmer rises from his seat, urging Peter to stay and telling him that he can't let him down now, revealing that they're 2 days away from making a deal. He pleads with Peter to stay until at least Friday, but Peter reminds his agent that his life is in danger, adding that there's no deal in the world worth risking his life for. Bulmer agrees, but after mulling it over for a moment, he suggests booking Peter a room at the Hotel Florio in the hills and tell everyone that he's gone to New York. He says Peter can just lay low until the publishers and financiers come back. He explains that this is a $1 million deal, which clearly piques Peter's interest.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Bulmer promises that only the two of them will know where he actually is, and he says that it's completely safe. This made me start to suspect Bulmer.
It did feel a little weird. Why are you so insistent on me staying here? I understand the deal, but my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you know that Peter's not going to die,
Yeah.
Okay.
and you also, I mean, it's very morbid and gross, but you are drumming up publicity for your client by killing all these people
Yeah.
connected to Peter's book.
Okay.
It's gross.
No, but he's
No,
a good
but yeah.
he's a good suspect.
But just then, A call buzzes in on the screen of Bulmer's intercom, his secretary alerting him to a call from Sir Donald Otley on line 1. Peter takes this as his cue to exit, but he doesn't agree to Bulmer's request, only commenting that he'll call him this afternoon. Interesting, I will say, to set up a meeting with Bulmer in a way, this afternoon.
Yes.
Okay.
But after Peter leaves, Bulmer attempts to take the call, only to discover that Sir Donald has hung up. Frustrated, Bulmer tells his secretary that he is to receive no more calls, and he switches off the intercom. But after looking around the room suspiciously for a moment, Donald rises from his chair and stalks over to the wall next to his office door. After a beat, he knocks on the wall, which opens a panel, a seemingly secret closet, and out from this passage steps Jane, in a white dress and dark sunglasses. She immediately removes her glasses, shifting her eyes around the room before meeting Bulmer's gaze and collapsing into an embrace and a passionate kiss.
I could not fucking believe it.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And she was in the office. What, like, is this like a thing for you guys? Because like, I would be sick.
Yeah, I was surprised, very surprised. I was like, okay, so everybody's cheating, or everybody was like, what's going on?
And it did make me laugh a little bit because it looked like after they kissed, her makeup was on his face.
It was a very deep kiss.
It was.
Yeah.
Bulmer breathlessly assures Jane that it's okay as she looks away, admitting that she feels so sleazy, especially after hearing Peter's voice and knowing that he was on the other side of the door. And she wonders if he knows about them. Bulmer assures her that he doesn't and promises her that it won't be long. Jane turns to leave, but Bulmer stops her to make lunch plans. She asks him, same place? And he confirms this, the Piazza Arduini at 1 o'clock.
Y'all are out eating in public?
Yeah.
You have a routine? Like, damn. But we find Peter riding passenger in Gianni's car once again, Gianni firmly refusing to go inside Bertie's house. Peter assures him that he won't have to, and that he can just stay in the car if he wants. But the camera presses in on Gianni as he remembers that someone shut off all the lights last night, and it wasn't Bertie. Overtaken by trauma, he also remembers Bertie's scream. Flashes of the murder replay in Gianni's mind, and when he remembers the pane of glass loudly shattering, he returns to himself, accidentally speeding through a busy intersection to the fearful surprise of Peter. A motorist slams on their brakes, getting rear-ended by a speeding car from behind, but Gianni just keeps on driving as Peter stares out the back window, catching his breath. But they near the mansion, Peter getting out of the car and instructing Gianni to keep driving, telling him that he'll walk around alone to the property.
This poor guy is fucking traumatized and nobody gives a fuck.
No.
Yeah.
And Peter like got out of the car. He hadn't even stopped yet. Like he could not wait to get out of the car.
Yeah. And again, he's an intern, so you're paying him on what? Hopefully getting a job?
Yeah.
Yeah, and look what he's been through.
Mhm.
And they're just like, just let me out here. It's like, dude.
But Peter wipes sweat away from his brow with a handkerchief, and when he arrives on the scene, he finds a heavy police presence investigating the area, along with Germani, who tells him that he would have called, but he didn't want Peter here until after they did a complete checkup. And this is, I will say, the first crime scene that Peter has taken it upon himself to come to.
It is.
Yeah.
But Peter asks if Germani thinks that it was the same killer, and he says that it appears it was, only this time, like with Maria, the killing was done with an axe. Germani asks if he's received a yellow envelope from the killer yet, and when Peter says that he hasn't, Germani assures him that he will. He then asks Peter if he only met with Cristiano Berti twice, and Peter confirms this, once at the airport and then at the studio for the interview. But Germani shows Peter a series of documents, each with detailed titles written by Berti. Peter Neal, Analysis of Obsessions, and Peter Neal, Aberrant Behavior, the Novelist, and finally, Peter Neal, Personal. This intrigues Peter, and they open the folder, reading from it like a biography. Peter Neal, born in Rhode Island, prep school in Yale, strict Catholic.
And it says you had sex with your assistant last night?
How the hell?
Not that page. Not that page.
No.
Yeah.
Skip it.
Yeah, that's the filthy lie. But he then passes the document over to Peter, inviting him to look as he continues reading from it. Taller than I expected, with hazel eyes. He looked at me often, but never spoke to me. Peter expresses a sincere surprise as Germani remarks that someone was very interested in Peter's life. That file is from that meeting at the airport. Because he did look at him a lot, but they never spoke.
Yeah.
But the two men walk outside together, Peter walking ahead of Germani and sneezing forcefully, attributing it to an allergy to dust. But Germani is more interested in the small bandage on the back of Peter's head, and he asks him what happened. Peter explains that he's just been beating his brains out about this case, and he's surprised that Germani doesn't have a wound too.
That's not an answer.
Yeah.
And that's not how that works either.
No.
Again, when he said that, I was like, why are you dodging that question?
Yeah. And why would you not tell him?
Yes. Instead of asking a follow-up question about this weird-ass explanation, Germani just changes the subject, telling Peter one more thing. The killer and Cristiano Berti were both obsessed by his work, and the last time he asked him, he admits that he was a little sarcastic, but Germani reiterates that they need all the help they can get. Peter shares that he's made charts and tried building a plot in the same way that Germani has to figure it out, but he says that he has a hunch that something is missing, a tiny piece of the jigsaw, that someone who should be dead is still alive, or someone who should be alive is already dead. When Germani asks him to explain that, Peter elaborates by sharing a sentence from a book by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true. Germani recognizes this quote from The Hound of the Baskervilles, but Peter adds that the impossible in this case is that a chain of killings doesn't make sense. And while in Doyle's novel, the impossible was a giant ghost mastiff, Peter still maintains that the improbable in this case, much like the book, is almost certainly weird and unbelievable, but possible. He says that this is what they have to find, as the truth is always possible. But just as Peter turns to leave, Germani appeals to him, the avid reader that he is, expressing the hope that Peter has at least 20 future novels to write and publish in the future, and to ensure that they all end up on Germani's reading list over the years, the detective asks, from an admittedly selfish position, if Peter would leave town for his own safety, today. Peter shares that he planned to do just that, and relieved, Germani asks Peter to let him know where to find him, and he wishes him luck.
Listen. If I were in this situation, I would have suspected Jane. From somebody watching this film, I knew that Jane was too obvious. And then seeing her, she's not in Rome for Peter. She's in Rome because she's boning Bulmer. To me, my number one suspect was the detective.
Really?
Yes, because it was him at the beginning when he's like, I've read all your books. I was like, red flag.
Yeah.
Because it's clearly someone obsessed. And now I'm like, now he knows where you're going.
Hey, you know what? Honestly, that's another thing to consider. And you honestly had a really good theory. Because the first thing that we see at the beginning of the film is someone starting to read Tenebrae. The first time he meets Peter Neal, he says, I started reading it last night.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he was because that would have still been shocking, and you know what I mean? But the pieces kind of fit.
Yeah,
So he was my number one suspect. And then when he's like, just let me know where you're going, I was like, Peter!
But we see Jane arrive at her temporary place of residence in Rome. But outside on her doorstep, she finds a very red package waiting for her, trimmed in gold ribbon. An attached card reads, "For you, Jane." She smiles, picking it up and entering the apartment, closing the door behind her. I will say like we had talked about before with a lot of the production design being very, very white, I am worried because of the way her apartment looks.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think her red lipstick is what is going to be the red in this place.
No.
Yeah.
I will also draw everyone's attention to a very interesting and very sharp metal sculpture by the door.
Mm-hmm.
For no reason.
Yeah.
But setting the package down on a table, Jane can't wait to unwrap it. As the music pulses around her, she unties the ribbon, tearing through the red paper to open the white box inside. But when she reaches inside, she pulls out a very red pair of high-heeled shoes. She admires them with a smile.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah.
But at the Piazza Arduini, Bulmer mulls around in his signature hat and holding a copy of Newsweek. He looks around, awaiting Jane's arrival, but becomes impatient. But meanwhile, in a POV shot, we follow shaky steps through the streets of Rome and into a nearby bar, where an uncredited bartender sets a glass of water down in front of us. We see a tight shot of 2 pills resting on the counter, accompanied by the sound of heavy breathing. He's probably worried he's going to miss Pardon My Zinger. But Bulmer eventually finds the comfort of a stone bench, sitting down to continue waiting for Jane. A very red ball bounces over to him, and a small child rushes over to retrieve it from him and continue playing.
Once again, all this red.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bulmer surveys the area, smiling at the passers-by and admiring the architecture of the city. But when he glances over to a cafe, he spies a fight breaking out between 2 patrons, which inspires a smile from him. When he looks over at a nearby fountain, however, he spies a woman having a heated argument with her boyfriend. He gestures wildly, his fury registering in Italian, before he storms off, leaving her in tears as she sits on the fountain's marble edge.
Did y'all plan to meet in just the most dramatic spot in Rome?
Do you remember? Do you remember on The Exorcist when Father Marin is facing off with that statue and those dogs start fighting, and it's just like, it's like this place is evil, dude. Like that's how this feels.
Should have known something, huh?
Yes.
But Bulmer continues his people watching, and he smiles when the uncredited boy with his ball returns, only to be whisked away by his father, who I must point out is wearing a very red shirt. And a man passes by on a bicycle, also in a red shirt.
Of course.
Yeah.
But when Bulmer stands from his seat, he's immediately shoulder-checked by a random pedestrian quite harshly. He takes it in stride, but when he turns in the other direction, he faces us in a POV shot, responding somewhat jovially until he notices the sharp edge of a blade. And very similar to the nightmare sequence we saw before, in dread-filled quick-cut shots, Bulmer is stabbed repeatedly in the stomach, in broad daylight.
That part.
I was like...
Yeah, I really, that was my whole note, was damn, in broad daylight and nobody cares?
Yeah.
I mean, the dogs are fighting. It's a bad area. But I'm like, what has changed now that this killer is targeting men? Because that's not been a thing.
Okay.
Except the last 2.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The assailant disappears, but Bulmer collapses to the ground, clutching the wound at his gut. He reaches upward when the crying woman from the fountain reaches him. Noticing his anguish in his blood-stained shirt, the woman screams. A crowd gathers, surrounding Bulmer as he dies, and we notice a small yellow envelope dropped at the side of his body. A very red pair of high heels joins the gathered crowd, but upon discovering Bulmer's body at the center of the crowd's attention, the heels quickly break away, vacating the murder scene.
Too spicy for the pepper.
Yeah.
I was like, this can be nobody but Jane.
Yeah.
Right.
Very strange for there to be no reaction.
Yeah.
Your lover is dead.
She's like, oh.
Oh, we won't be having lunch. All right.
It's a bad luck.
Yeah.
Yes.
But at Peter's apartment, as it turns out, with the help of Anne booking him a hotel, Peter has decided to leave the city after all and is preparing for a trip to Paris. But a phone call interrupts them, Anne answering it, and Peter declining to take the call when he learns it's Germani on the other end. Anne hangs up after a very short conversation, telling Peter that something has apparently happened, and Germani was only calling to make sure that Peter was safe and actually leaving Rome. But the camera follows Anne, who answers the door after the doorbell rings, finding Gianni standing out in the hall. Carrying his bags to the door, Peter assures Gianni that his services won't be needed, as he's already asked Anne to drive him to the airport. But Gianni shares that he was planning to go back to the house. He says that he's certain that if he returns there, he could discover something that he's forgotten, a piece of the puzzle that he needs to remember. He then asks Peter where he's going, but Anne apologizes to him, telling him that it's classified information. Gianni understands, and Peter apologizes as well to Gianni, remorseful at the fact that he's gotten so caught up in everything. Gianni very kindly says that he wouldn't say that it's worth it, but he's glad that he was able to meet Peter, and he says that he hopes to see him again when Peter returns to Rome. Peter pats Gianni's cheek warmly, and they all exit the apartment together, Peter taking one last look behind him before they head to the elevator. We then see a plane taking flight through the blueness of the evening, departing the airport in Rome. But we cut to Gianni returning to Berti's home, parking his car and stepping out of it as the wind rustles the branches of the trees that line the walkway. As a storm rages in the distance, thunder clattering and lightning flashing, suspicious of being seen, Gianni looks around before hopping over the fence and onto Berti's property. But unbeknownst to Gianni, a black-gloved hand reaches into his car, removing the key from the ignition. But Gianni makes his way through the backyard of Berti's property, walking over to the shattered window through which he saw Berti murdered the night before. He remembers the whispered words of the murderer, but only now does he realize it was Berti's voice that he heard that night. We're taken back to that night, where Berti stands before his killer, fearfully confessing, "It was me. I killed them. I killed them all." This, if you recall from Suspiria, 3 irises. Turn the blue one.
Yeah.
This feels like that memory of, I don't know why I stutter. I just love Suspiria, I guess. This reminds me of that memory that Susie had where a whisper kind of solved everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. I was just like, this could have been brought to my attention yesterday. I was like, Gianni, please.
Fair.
I wanted to shake him a little bit.
Yeah, I'm very worried him coming back over here.
And what? That. Alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, Peter didn't want to tell the police. But then, I don't know. I was just thinking because Gianni had hesitance last night too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
So I
He was
really,
like, I didn't see shit. I only saw a fucking brutal murder.
and I heard the voice of the killer.
Well, but if Peter doesn't want to say anything, maybe he's just trying to take a cue from him.
That's true.
He's like, I'm trying to get this job
Yeah.
at the Rome office.
I mean, but as the rain hammers down, Gianni struggles to understand. Cristiano Berti was the murderer, but who killed him? Gianni runs through the rain, climbing back over the fence and returning to the shelter of his car. He reaches for his keys in the ignition, but he finds them missing. He reaches frantically for his pockets to locate them, but suddenly, the music grows frenzied as a garrote is cinched around his throat, pulled tightly from the seat behind him by black-gloved hands. Gianni struggles against his attacker, veins bulging from his forehead as he tries to wrench his fingers between the garrote and his throat. He tries to turn around to face his killer, but life slips away from him before he can, and he slumps over dead against his steering wheel.
Poor Gianni.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that Berti was the killer.
No.
Mhm.
I mean, it was to the point where he was too obvious. I'm like, no, it's got to be the detective. But I'm like, what would the motive be for killing him when he had said or alluded that Peter Neal was his next victim?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's somebody trying to protect Peter Neal. Why would they bash him in the head with a rock?
Yeah.
Why would they kill Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not making sense. So I was very confused.
It all feels impossible.
Yeah. See, I thought Bulmer and Jane had more to do with that. Because when we seen her in the office, I was like, oh, it's you two fuckers.
Right.
But then he got off and I was like, oh, never mind. Because she showed up again. We see her feet in the dress. We know it's her.
Yeah.
She comes and's like, fuck this, and takes off. So that I was like, oh, what is this?
It could almost lead you to believe that it was Jane.
Right.
Well, the look on his face.
Yeah, he seemed very happy to see whoever it was.
Yeah.
It's just confusing. And again, if we're doing this in my mind to protect Peter, Bulmer, well, I guess he was fucking around behind his back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he was good to him professionally.
Yeah.
He could separate.
You know?
$1
Separate
million
it.
bill.
Exactly.
But we follow the point of view of the killer walking through Bertie's backyard through the pouring rain. The killer clears a tree of leaves to find an axe stashed against the bare bark. They retrieve it as the music in the score oscillates. But back at Peter's apartment, Anne is packing up his belongings into cardboard boxes. She's interrupted from her work when the telephone rings, and when she answers it, she discovers it's Jane on the other end. She sits distraught in her apartment, sorry to have reached Anne instead of Peter. Jane explains that she did something, remarking that it's as if there are two people inside of her. Through nervous breaths, she adds that sometimes it's like the other person takes over. Anne asks Jane if she's in Rome, and she confirms that she is, and she begs Anne for her help, woefully whispering that she doesn't want to kill herself. Anne pleads with Jane to tell her where she is, and promises that she'll come around. Jane gives her address, an apartment on the Casilla, number 11. Anne assures her that she'll be right over, and as she hangs up the phone, Jane apologizes, muttering that she didn't mean to. She just wanted to explain about everything she's done. But with no one on the other end of the phone, Jane exhales, her lips seemingly curling into a smirk.
I don't trust you.
Yeah,
No. Well, what she said on the phone, I was like, is that a confession?
Yeah.
it felt like one, but then you're also like, well, I mean, you could be confessing to infidelity.
Yeah.
And you did presumably just see your... I
Or-
was going to say affair partner, but I don't think her and Peter are together. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, maybe it's the property damage and the vandalism that she did as well.
She did do that.
Yeah.
She did do that.
But at the police station, a fight is broken up just outside of Altieri's office. Officers escorting the men outside as she guides an elderly woman to a seat, continuing and concluding their conversation. We then see Altieri entering Germani's office across the hall, where he sits at his desk, hanging up his telephone after announcing, "Okay, I'm coming." Germani curses, but turns his attention to Altieri, asking her, "Who's the lady?" She explains that the housekeeper of the place that Bulmer rented is here. She says that the woman is Filipina and has a lot of interesting things to say, like Bulmer had a girlfriend who came around a lot. Germani learns that the woman speaks Tagalog and Spanish, so he instructs Altieri to question her before sharing that the murderer has killed again and he has to go. He looks in at Bulmer's housekeeper before announcing to Altieri that he'll see her later. But after a quick shot of Jane pacing around the apartment in her red high-heeled shoes, clutching a gun as a storm rages outside, we return to the police station where Altieri interviews Bulmer's housekeeper in Spanish, asking if she has anything of Bulmer's. The woman smiles, handing Altieri a piece of Bulmer's mail from her purse. She opens it, and after looking at it for a moment, tells the woman that she can leave, bidding her goodbye. Altieri sits for a moment before grabbing her jacket to exit the station. But in Bulmer's apartment, Jane sits fearfully at the dining room table, pointing the gun in front of her. But there's suddenly a clattering noise outside, and Jane calls out, hoping for it to be Anne, but her calls are answered by an adjacent window blowing open loudly from the storm, startling her. But we see Anne, still on her way to Jane by car, but Jane sits below her large window in the dining room, her gun still pointed in front of her. She looks away for a moment, calm seemingly returning to her, until a large axe smashes through the glass of the window, and the blade is promptly brought down on Jane's arm on the table, severing her hand at the wrist.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
She screams wildly as she rises from her chair, blood spewing like a fountain from her wound as her detached hand flinches on the table. Her white walls are painted red as she stumbles towards her kitchen, but the killer has made his way inside, hacking Jane in the spine with his axe. Jane turns to face her murderer, the music frenzied as a look of recognition and fear register on her blood-stained face. She collapses to the floor, and the killer repeatedly hacks at Jane's torso until her life slips away.
Could not have been more surprised.
Yeah.
And it looked incredible.
It did.
Yeah, I was not expecting to see all of this.
No, the level of brutality
Yeah.
and just the amount of gore was so shocking.
It's beautiful.
It was insane.
Yeah.
And the way it painted the wall, of course, having seen it first, it came out way later and making me think of Kill Bill.
Yes, that was
Okay.
exactly my thought.
But I did read in Fangoria, and I also saw in an interview with Dario Argento, I think it was a featurette called Screaming Queen. But Jane's murder, they filmed it, and they were pumping the blood through bicycle pumps. That's how they were doing that. And I got conflicting information in a commentary track from people who were not there, said that Argento had this sequence filmed 8 times. Dario Argento, who was there, said they only filmed it once.
Wow.
And so this is the only part of the film that is a set. And it had to be.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
I also did see that this, of course, and it shouldn't surprise you, is one of the scenes that was the most heavily censored in the film, in all cuts of the film.
I'm sure.
But Veronica Lario, the actress who plays Jane, went on in 1990 to marry Silvio Berlusconi, the former prime minister of Italy.
Oh,
Holy
damn.
shit.
He's, from what I understand, a piece of shit.
Wow.
But whenever they got married, any airing of this sequence was cut from every single version of the film in Italy.
Really?
Yes. And so it wasn't even restored until years and years later. And it was the reason was because of Berlusconi.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'd be like, let the people see me get my arm chopped off.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It was very cool.
Yeah. It looked awesome.
Yeah, cut me up in a movie.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
But we suddenly see a tight shot of an eye, the pupil contracting under a red light until it flashes white like lightning. We return to what we assumed to be a nightmare, the garden party with the girl from the beach, but once again, a knife is stabbed into her side, blood pouring from her wounds as she collapses dead on the brick walkway. But this time, the killer reaches down to collect the red shoes from the woman's feet. We return to the tight shot of the opened eye, its pupil dilating largely under the red light. One thing I will say, and I can't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but almost with the music box music and a revelation kind of being shown to us through a flashback, I think that's a reference to Deep Red.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But in a POV shot, the killer surveys Jane's corpse lying on the kitchen floor. But when a car approaches outside, the killer quietly shuts off the lights in the dining room. A woman's figure is seen through the opaque window in the front door, and the killer hides behind the door as it opens, the camera arcing around the person entering the apartment. Without hesitation, the killer strikes the woman in the back of the head with his axe, and she staggers to the ground, groaning in pain as blood coats the back of her jacket. As the woman lies bleeding on the floor, the killer steps forward, his axe shimmering in the lowly lit night as the camera rises from it, climbing up his torso to reveal, with a musical flourish, that the murderer is Peter Neal.
God damn.
Yeah.
The gasp right now was not real. When I was watching it, it absolutely was.
Yeah, 100%. I was not expecting this, and that's even my note was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I was floored. But if you think about it, we did not see him on the plane.
No.
We just saw the plane.
Yeah.
As you said, a bomb that never stops exploding.
Yeah, well, and I'm like, what an appallingly quick death for Anne.
Yeah. That's same.
Yeah.
But dripping with rain, he sinks to the floor, crawling over to the woman he just struck, and he pets her head with remorse. Germani suddenly appears through the open front door with his gun drawn as Peter looks up at him, muttering that he didn't know. He didn't know it was... Germani is then joined by Anne, who walks through the front door, throwing her hands over her shocked and shuddering breaths.
If you're right there, then who's...
Oh no!
Oh no! But I was like, what the fuck? Because I was positive that was Anne. And I was really fucking disappointed in her for going over there without calling anybody. But she did. But who was that?
Yeah. The camera dips down as Peter forcefully flips over the body of his victim, Detective Altieri.
Dumb.
Blood coats her mouth as her eyes stare off lifelessly, and Peter cowers in the corner of the dining room. Germani rounds the corner, pointing his gun at Peter, who recoils pathetically in the line of fire. Germani secures the gun from Jane's severed hand on the table, digesting the detestable scene before him. His eyes trace over the blood-spattered dining room wall until his eyes settle on Jane's body. He urges Anne not to look, but she sees past him before looking away in a shudder. Germani returns his attention to Peter, repeating the quote from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. He shares that Bulmer's housekeeper told Detective Altieri that Bulmer had an affair with Jane, but Altieri was too headstrong and came over to check on her own. Tears filling his eyes and lightning flashing around him, Germani says that Altieri didn't know that Peter was mad, completely mad, and it cost her life. Germani says that he doesn't know if he should hate Peter or feel sorry for him, but Peter shakes his head in a desperate denial, promising that he didn't kill the other women. Germani already knows this, deeming it impossible for him to have killed them. But Peter cradles his own legs, rocking slightly as a broken laugh escapes him. He explains that he found out that Cristiano Berti was the killer, which didn't take him too long to realize. His laughter continues as he snarls that the rest was like writing a book. I want to point out that moment between Berti and Peter at that mock interview.
Yeah.
Whenever he says, the killer is insane. And then he looks shocked, and then he changes his tune immediately.
Yeah.
I think that's when he realizes that Bertie's the killer. He's
Okay.
like, I'm talking to the killer.
Yeah. It was you.
Yeah.
Damn.
Germani calls it perfect revenge. The razor killer was dead, but Peter wanted him to live on long enough to be blamed for the murder of his fiancée and her lover, the two people he hated most. And I will say, Jane's murder is the most brutal in the film, and you realize it's because it's fucking personal.
Yeah.
And that's gross as hell.
But I'm like, you're fucking around too.
Oh, he is.
Who the fuck do you think you are?
He's Peter Neal.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Best-selling author.
But he also said they hadn't spoken in 6 weeks or some shit. Like, what? So what?
Oh, at the airport. Yeah. I don't know.
But he orders Peter to get up, seizing his handcuffs and telling Peter that he knows the routine. Peter does so reluctantly, creeping past Anne, who can't even bring herself to look at him. But Peter suddenly reaches into his shirt, turning to face Germani. A straight razor drawn, Peter drags it ragged across his own throat, slicing it open against the shouts and protestations of Germani and Anne. And he does so very dramatically, I will say.
Yeah.
There's a flare.
Yeah.
But he collapses to the floor, Anne rushing for him, crying over his body and caressing him gingerly. Germani attempts to call the police on the phone inside the apartment, but when he discovers that it's dead, he guides a distraught Anne outside through the rain to his vehicle.
I think somebody should keep an eye on Peter.
I mean, one of us. Once inside the car, Germani calls in on the radio that it's over. Anne can't believe Peter could be capable of such heinous crimes, and Germani agrees that he couldn't either, until the telex he received from Interpol this afternoon. He explains that when Peter was a young man in Rhode Island, a girl he knew was brutally murdered, and we see quick flashes of the girl on the beach from what we now know were Peter's flashbacks. Germani continues that someone accused him, but there wasn't any real evidence, and it was never brought to trial. But he says, if it was Peter Neal, then he committed an act that haunted his life and twisted his mind forever. Germani recognizes it all in a quote from the pages of Tenebrae. Now, he realized, that any obstacle or humiliation standing in his way could be swept aside by a simple act of annihilation. Murder. As Anne sobs, the rain pattering outside, Germani tells her that it's all over and that she can calm down. But his eyes return to Bulmer's apartment, a thought clearly crossing his mind as he tells Anne to stay inside the car and wait for him. I will say this scene is very the end of Psycho, where the guy's like, well, not quite. Let me explain the entire ending to you.
It's like you were real close.
But Germani rushes through the rain, back into the apartment where he discovers Peter's body to be missing.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
He touches the pool of blood, retrieving the straight razor that Peter used to slice his own throat. When he inspects the handle, he discovers a large red button at the base of it, and when he presses it, red liquid spurts out of the edge of the fake blade.
Not a prop.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
He came prepared.
he did. And just in case.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Germani rises to his feet in disbelief, his shoes clicking against the tile as he turns around to face the staged scene of suicide. Noticing Peter's monogrammed handkerchief, he leans down to pick it up, but framed and hidden perfectly behind Germani stands Peter Neal. That shot is incredible.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
When Germani rises again, obstructing our view of Peter, Peter raises the axe above his head, bringing it down into Germani's spine. Germani stumbles, gurgling blood as he knocks over a light fixture, which topples over the spiked sculpture next to the front door. As the music grows tense, Anne exits the car, approaching the front door of the house, which is blocked by the spiked sculpture. Peter stalks his way towards the door as Anne finally breaks through, bursting the sculpture into pieces and sending a shard of it right through Peter's gut, pinning him to the wall. Blood pours as he tries in vain to tear it from his guts, and Anne screams madly in the rain, thunder crackling and lightning flashing as Peter quietly dies. Anne's screams continue over the end credits.
That's the moment of catharsis that I was alluding to earlier. She said that it called for her to like kind of scream, but like kind of like whimpering and quiet. And it had been so tense and she was so frustrated that she just let loose. And she said it surprised everybody, including Argento, but he liked it. And she said it was just such a release and a catharsis for all the bullshit.
That's pretty cool, though. You got the take.
Yeah.
But we fade to black and the credits roll. So, what did you guys think of Tenebrae?
I do want to say that like I stated before, I know, T, I've heard you talk about it and then other people request it. But I am glad that this won the Patreon poll because this was very fun. A lot of cheese. I don't know if it's supposed to be funny. I will say that I'll be honest. I was a little confused when I got done with it because it's like, am I watching this in a artistic type way or am I watching this in a B horror movie type way? But you did talk about it at the beginning, you know what I mean? Just kind of, you can sit there and watch it and not have to pay attention to anything. The movie does unfold itself for you and it's really good. So I, thinking about it again and us talking about it, I really, really enjoyed this movie. This was really, really fun. I can only, for me, this is Italian B horror. Like, this was great. I enjoyed a lot of it. The kills, wow, like that. And I know it's not too old, but it is 82.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's still pretty early, and but damn, what a fun time.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like I said up at the top, this is just not what I was expecting. Again, I'm no giallo expert. I mean, I am, but I've been told that I'm not.
I was like, she admitted it.
I am. But I'm not well versed. And so you hear the term and you think it is going to be something very, very artistic and very high concept maybe. But this is it is very, very accessible. And the story, it's just so intriguing, so interesting. And again, they managed to pull off an ending that I will say it was not expecting.
Yeah.
That was a treat watching him really play two characters in this, because that unhinged version at the end was really a treat. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
I loved the kills. I loved the journey. And I'm very sorry to that detective that I suspected, because he was just doing his job and he was doing it well.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, this is just a really good time. It is, like you said, it has the cheese and the kind of fun and interesting kills of a B horror movie. But there are also some very beautiful and striking images to look at. It really is. I mean, it was a very good time. And like you said, I'm very grateful that this was the one that got voted in, because I don't know when I would have gotten around to it if not for the show. But it was a really, really good time.
Yeah.
I am so glad that you both enjoyed this film, and I hope that it leads to us covering more giallo films in the future.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
we've done a lot, but
We disagree. Agree to disagree. Just let's get through this. No, I agree with everything you both said. I love the story. I love the atmosphere of it. I love the twists and turns. It really is just a twist upon a twist upon a twist.
Yeah.
And it's a twist that it falls in line with exactly what he said. The impossible, however improbable, it does.
yeah.
And it makes sense, and it's not something that you're like, well, wait, but if that was this, then that can't. No. Peter didn't start killing anyone until after this
Right.
point.
And they make that clear, although it is a little
It is a
clumsy.
little funny, yeah. He's like, no, I never did any of this.
They're like, we know.
Yeah, we were aware. You were in the air and this happened. But no, I think it's exactly as you said. On the surface, it can just be an incredibly fun movie to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And then underneath, there is this depth of commentary, these ideas of misogyny, institutional, like the way that society deems certain things, the way that people react to art,
Right.
the things that happen when art leaves the hands of its creator, which are not the artist's responsibility,
No.
but reflect on the artist in an unfortunate way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what Argento was trying to say. And he literally embraced it. He's like, you're saying I make horror films and I'm a murderer? Then I will make myself the murderer in this film.
Yeah, he's Sutter Kane now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. I think that I really enjoy films that, and we get it a lot with Stephen King. It's nice to see it from another person, where a writer is the lead in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so much fun with In the Mouth of Madness. It's so much fun here. It's a lot of Hush.
Oh, yeah.
1408.
14. Well, it's Stephen King.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He does them all.
1408 as well.
And The
does.
Shining.
The Shining.
Dude, we could keep going.
Forgot you said not Stephen
Yeah.
King. Got it. It.
No, we have about 50 more films to get there, I think. But no, I think that it is a blast on its surface and then so deep underneath that surface. And it is so artistically interesting. So many choices are made. That crane shot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just so wild, so unbelievable. I love the production design. Like, this is not a film to miss.
No.
And I'm very glad that it was voted in, like you said. I'm glad that you both enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I just, this is why I love giallo.
I get it.
Yeah.
Misery.
Yes. That's another one. But I guess we can slide into ratings.
Yeah.
I've pretty much said all that I felt. I just think that on its surface, on a technical level, on an artistic level, the style, the tone, the atmosphere, the feeling that I get watching this movie, it's fantastic. I have so much fun with it, and I also have a lot of fun thinking about what Argento is trying to say with it.
Okay.
And I said it in the intro, Argento gets this criticism all the time of being style over substance. And I understand why people say that sometimes, but the style is so perfect to me that I have no complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But a film like this, it is both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This story makes sense. The narrative is one to follow, and it does take you on a lot of twists and turns.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting, and I really can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah.
And one more time for the music.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got to give it up to that theme song. It's fantastic.
It was a character in itself.
Honestly,
really was.
Yeah. But I will close things out for me and say that out of 10 malicious and mysterious murders, I am going to give Tenebrae 9 malicious and mysterious murders out of 10. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I really can't believe that I've only seen it, I guess 3 times now for watching it twice for the show.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it in my whole life.
Okay.
This is added to the rotation. It has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will now open the floor to you.
To just add on to everything I said earlier, like the movie, I was not expecting the ending. I know I said how much fun it was and silly and whatever, but even just kind of watching it and breaking it down for the show, you saying that like the story and all that and what's in here, it does keep you wanting to know what's going to happen. Oh, whoever who suspected, that's not who it was. And then you get to it and it's like, oh my God, because I know for me, I had no idea that was coming whatsoever.
No.
And when it happened, I was like, damn, it was in front of us, but then it wasn't in front of us.
Yeah.
So it's like, how could you have known that? But yeah, I think even that, following the story and then us, like I said, talking about it, it did make me appreciate the movie a whole lot more than just kind of watching it. And I agree with the rotation, throwing it in there. The only thing, and I know this movie makes up a lot for it, I'm missing a samurai sword on a dirt bike in a movie theater.
Going back to demons.
Yes. So, I mean, if it would have had that in the backyard, perfect.
It's a 10.
Perfect, yeah. But I think for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, malicious and mysterious murders, I'm going to give Tenebrae an 8. I really, really enjoyed what this movie brought. Even just watching it and not kind of like trying to pick up on hints or trying to, just watching it as a movie, I was like, this is really funny. This is really good. And even, again, the ending, they explain what's going on, but I feel like it is done in a way that's not, it's not bad. It is just, look, you need to know this. We're ending the movie. This is what's happening. It's like, oh, okay.
All right.
But you do get closure. You do understand why it couldn't have been Peter, but then it was Peter and why he did what he did.
Yeah. I just want to point out his antics of murdering Berti, throwing himself on the ground, staging the whole rock thing. That, in retrospect, is fucking iconic and hilarious, and nobody can take that away from him. That's why he's like, no, it's fine. We don't need to call anybody at all. It's fine. No, and it's moments like that, rewatching it, because I watched it a second time before we sat down to record. You get little treats like that where you're like, I know this motherfucker did not, but he did. No, I completely agree with both of y'all. I think that the humor, if it is intentional, it really doesn't matter because that's what I received. It's sparing and it hits every time. Because like tonally, sometimes we come across these weird films where it's like, why is this so silly in this moment? Or why, whatever. It really maintained a successful balance for me.
Okay.
We've already talked about the visuals of it, the kills. And I think that the story moves along very quickly, but I think that this film still does a really impressive job of still giving us a sense of who these people are.
Yeah.
Instead of just flat characters, although we don't spend a lot of time developing that, I think that that's another pro that we haven't really mentioned.
That is true because poor Gianni.
Oh man.
And he does have lines and he is there, but he's just trying to help and he's just trying to do his job.
Yeah.
And we do feel bad when he gets got.
Yeah.
And even with the dubbing, the performances are fantastic.
Yes, they are. But yeah, it really was a treat. It's not very often that we get to kind of discover, and it is always a little more special when it's voted in, because it's like, this is a gift from us to you. You know what I mean? And it's like, thank y'all, because I really did like this. But to sum it all up, on a scale from 1 to 10, malicious and mysterious murders, I gave Tenebrae 8.5.
Huh.
Malicious and mysterious murders.
Very good.
It's a really good time. There are a couple moments where it's like, come on now, I can't quite get to 9, but I can get close, because I really did have a good time.
Yeah.
And the twist at the end, it really, really paid off, and it was very successful.
I will say, our love of puns, it was so difficult for me not to give this a 10 a break. Well, that's all from us at Pod Mortem. What would you rate Tenebrae, and what should we watch next? Let us know on Twitter at the Pod Mortem. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and like our Stairhole Productions page on Facebook. Be sure to follow each of us on Twitter at TravisMWH, at Blood and Smoke, and at RealStreeter84. Thanks again to Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Please consider pledging to our Patreon, where you'll gain access to bonus content, our monthly schedule, our Discord server, and the opportunity to help us decide which films to cover. Stay tuned until after the music for a special thank you to our Wendigo Getter patrons. And remember, in the story of your life, you are the author. Don't let one chapter dictate your ending. Until next time. Thank you for staying tuned. We want to give a very special thank you to all of our Wendigo Getter patrons.
Woo! Yeah.
Very good. A special thank you to
Chris Ontiveros, Kristen Lofton, Megan Martinez, Kimberly Bass, Sophie Hodson, Anthony Jerome M., Jordan Nash, Kent Morton, Lala Thomas, Travis Anissa Hunter, Miguel Myers ATX, Jennifer Perez, Allison O'Neill, Carissa, TJ and Angie Bronson, Gabrielle Trevino, Spooky Mom, Applin Ontiveros, Karima Rhodes, Antonio Huerta, Kimberly Kleindienst, Will Brown, Sydney Smith, Osvaldo Soto, Bobby Holmes, Donna Eason, JD Rezak, Molly Gerhard, Armand Spasto, Aaron Aguirre, Eggy, William Barry, Brittany Seaman, Charity Oxner, Amanda Six, Mandy Rainwater, Jordan Roberts, Dylan, Liz Heath, Spencer Montavo, Pancake the Panda, John Ramos, Michael Nuding, Alexis Roberts, Dan Laveau, Itzy M, Gary Horton, Leisha Olivier, Kate Lamp, Carlos and Sydney, Jessica Hunter, Helena Rudder, Alan Johnston, Mariah, Livy Fun, Scott Troutman Wise, Towton Watson, Mozzie Bear, Brittany G, Dave Burke, Adrian Stakes, Daniel McGinnis, Nick Spill, Emma Hagel Kissinger, Valerie G, Emiliana, Brian Glass, CB, Taylor Santana, Will Lewison, Angelique, Smelly Poo Poo Head, Beth Bauer,
Cookie, Esperanza J, Jason Kyle OKC, Danielle Peralta, Brandon, Sawyer Reese Farr, Dr. Diva Loves Horror, Girl That's Scary, Cassandra, Andrea Simmons, Ashley Higuera, William and Xxena Rush, Ryan Brom, Megan Ochoa, Laura Lassiter, Eileen O, Marissa E, Sydney, Henry F, Megan M, Strangely Sarah, Christy Beck, Nancy and Andy, Amanda Lopez, Andy Terrell, Jason Hanovan, Katie K, Erica Morin, Cameron S, Nicole Stewart, Tris Wynn, K.87, Mariah Jensen, Carrie A, Lonnie Lono, Powell, Kayla E, Maggie H, Murder Stina, No Thanks Tom Hanks, Kevin McGonigal, Kristen Marcy, Ori81 Baricua, Look Like That One Girl, Bog Boy, Felnez63, Alita Pui, Probably My Jugs, Kate Thackeray, Wade Pack, A Lizard, Bay J, Jay Rich, Jen Lassiter, Topher Williams, Elena Metler, Jean Jacket, Valerie K, Christy Lee Kruger, Professor of Humanities Laura McCarricker, Naomi, Josh Smith,
Abby Kopp, Crystal 831, Skank Sinatra, Morgan Alexander, Tony Osteen, Julie Fredborg, Rihanna S, Daniel Taylor, Anna Kate, Heather Ortiz, Jen T, Kim H, August, Vengeance Spirit, Sam J. Green, Kelly Glazyface Mack, Jenny May, Zoe Marie, Glittery Fab, Malik Caselli Armstrong, Scarly D, Toya Shea, Katie, Martin Shaw, Star, Tyler J, Daniel Dickerson, Jordan Gaddis, Cam Davies, Patrick Hoagland, Raven, King Roger, D, Wesley Tart, Kristen Jackson, Jacob Nordberg, Spencer, Samantha McCaskill, Damian Grant, Half Price Horror, Clemmy, Nisi Nay, Erica, Jason X Rules, Karen Burrows, 203 Duncan, Aaron Norman, Stephen Rogers, Victoria Smith, Corey Gillen, Patricia A. Graham, Erasmo Pena, Danielle Wright, Bud Hates Mushrooms, Tabitha Thomas, Connie Lingus, and Becca Boo. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we hope you folks are all right. That's WRIT.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Peter Neal.
Had to explain.
Yeah.
Until next time.